Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 213. 13, a lucky number for some, myself included because I was born on Friday 13th of course, so I take every 13 in my stride as a thing that I don't have to feel unlucky about, and sometimes, you are very lucky to be a part of, these kind of important things in the world, things like cults. I'm not a part of a cult. I think Bally, however, has joined a cult.
Oh, yes.
There's this thing called Wordle that everyone's fucking talking about, and Bally...
I'm only 2 days in, but I do think it's pretty great. Me and Caroline have a blast just like sitting there trying to work it out, and I'm better at like building to the answer, but then every time Caroline actually gets the answer, that's where she's better at it.
She's the real English person in the household. Yeah. It's one of those things that I saw. When did you first start seeing it on Twitter? Because it was over Christmas at some point.
Weeks ago, three weeks ago, I'll say.
Yeah. And I didn't understand it. I clicked on it once and I was like, I don't understand this. I'm going to ignore it for the rest of my life. And then literally everybody and all the podcasts I listened to started talking about it, and I was like, all right, I don't know, maybe I'm just going to ignore this forever. And then Bally was like, well, I'm not. I'm going to just jump in and do it. So, it seems like a fun thing if you want to do it. But I'm just going to mute the word Wordle on Twitter because I'm just kind of, I get it, but I'm just kind of sick of seeing those dots on my timeline. It's cool. Well done. You did it in 2 tries. Good job, Nick. I appreciate
tries,
you.
Yeah.
But,
that's solid.
But I don't care. So anyway, what I do care about is real video games, which we're going to talk a lot about today on this show. But a couple of things up top of the show. I want to give a shout out for some emails because we're running a bit low after the holiday period of people sending in their Game of the Year lists and stuff like that. So if you have a burning question within your gut that you must expel onto paper, nay digital paper, then please do to an email to send us. Bally, what's the email address?
The email address is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Lovely stuff. Please do send those in. We will obviously get to some emails today, but also would love to have some more in the box that we can dig our hands into and pull on out. So go ahead and do that. Also, we will be doing our game trade at the end of the show, so stick around for that to see what games we will be forcing each other to play this year. I believe last year I made Bally play Codename Steam, and he made me play Rhythm Heaven, and we both just loved those games, of course, so that was great. We're looking forward to this year and what we're going to do, so stick around.
I improved on Okami from the year before. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be talking a lot about stuff in this show. Bally will tell you all the stuff, what we're going to be talking about.
For the first segment, we've got some games that we have been playing. For the second segment, we've got your emails. And then for the third segment, we're going to be running through all the games, or many of the games, coming to Nintendo Switch in 2022. And just kind of sharing our thoughts, what we're looking forward to, what we're less excited about, and looking ahead. I
have a fun game tied to that I've not told you about yet, but Excellent. It will be exciting. So look forward to it. Excellent. Let's get into the video games we've been playing then. There's a lot of stuff happening in terms of... I guess there's not really anything happening. I think things will start to be happening soon, but I feel like every year, this time of, the month, especially the start of January, you can kind of chill and go back to things you missed and dig into the backlog a bit.
We do have the most loaded February you've ever seen in the history of video games coming, which is just a bizarre month for all these big games to come out. For Switch, you got Arceus coming out in January.
That's true. Yeah, so
time.
Things will heat up pretty quickly. However, we're here to lay back and dig into some old games that we have not checked out yet. And Bally, you've been doing just that in preparation, I guess, for a new game that's coming out.
I've been playing Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. I love that name. It's just so strange and
I don't know. I think the plus Rabbids in there has always bothered me a little bit. It's just a bit weird when you type it out on a website or when you put it somewhere. I'm like, could you not have used an ampersand or something, or an and? But no, plus is what they went with.
What is an ampersand?
Ampersand is the and sign.
Oh, it's the and sign. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Everyone just calls it the and sign, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just a bit much of a fucking toff to call it an ampersand. But yes, that's what it's called. Anyway.
Rabbids are still incredibly weird. They are so
you don't say.
Strange. They are way, way, way weirder, in my view, than Minions. like way weirder. Like I hadn't really ever broken down what they actually are, what Rabbids is a reference to, and all these things. And I was just like, of course, it's like, it's rabies. We're pretending that these things are like literal rabbits, as it were, that have rabies, and then that is their justification for being so mad. And it's
their
like,
origin is in a Rayman game, right? Like the original Rayman Raving Rabbids for Wii is like the origin of the Rabbids, and then like somewhere along the way, Ubisoft just didn't care about Rayman anymore, and the Rabbids became more popular than him. So that's just like a weird world we live in now.
But just like, let's make a series of cartoon characters that are based on like animals infected by rabies. It's just like the most ridiculous, strange, probably quite a French thing to kind of put out into the world.
There's a lot of French energy with the Rabbids, I think. I think they have a TV show as well, like an animated one, and they are like Minions adjacent, but I think like almost less PG than Minions. Like they kind of push the envelope a little bit with the Rabbids.
And they, to their credit, they are genuinely funny. Like I'm a sucker for slapstick. I always have been, but like I've genuinely just like burst out laughing at my Nintendo Switch, and I don't really do that even for like a lot of weirder funny games. Like I was actually just laughing by myself at my Switch.
There's a great moment that you tweeted out of this Donkey Kong boss grabbing Rabbid Peach and just like wiping his ass with her, and I'm just like, what? I forgot that was a thing. But this game goes places for sure.
I was just like stunned into silence by that one, and thought, you know what, I should grab that video and make that a tweet, because that is just ridiculous. And apologies for like maybe spoiling Rabid Kong in there, but this game, it's an old game.
I mean, everyone knows at this point, right?
Gotta know Rabid Kong. This game is a lot of fun so far. Like I have decided I need to play more strategy games that are not made by Intelligent Systems, because like I traditionally always the Advanced Wars person, and I've played a bunch of Fire Emblem as well, and I do enjoy both those series. I've gone on Fire Emblem a little bit more, especially recently.
And you played their best game last year, Codename Steam, of course.
Of course. And even though Codename Steam is very different to those two other games, there's still like this kind of DNA that runs through it that you can feel like it is still quite Intelligent Systems related, even though it's very different. And Rabbids just feels completely different, and where, it is a bit strange, the fact there are these just blocks, and I guess they've taken like the Mario Mushroom Kingdom style blocks for a lot of these blocks that are kind of, and then they have layers of defense before they vanish, and then you have to find other defensive layers, and you are just like cover shooting essentially, which also feels very strange for a Mario game. And we're just shooting guns at each other, because why the hell not? And
it is this kind of blend of like XCOM stuff with the sci-fi like guns going on, but also with this kind of crossover with the kind of brighter, more colorful aesthetic. And it is a unique blend, while also having like, it has a bunch of interesting mechanics that I don't think I've seen in another strategy game, and like the chaining together stuff I think is probably my favorite thing about this game, of like running into an enemy, sliding behind a corner, jumping off of one of your allies to jump onto an enemy's head, and then getting back behind somewhere to then shoot from cover, and while also like being set up for like an Overwatch ability or something. It feels like every turn you can pack so much into a single turn,
and even I'm only maybe like just past a quarter, less than a third through the game, and I'm already like, I've got 4 characters and I'm already chaining things together, especially like jumping off an ally onto another area, especially as the levels start to get more 3-dimensional and higher versus low ground. And it's like you can really just create shortcuts that don't necessarily break the level, but make the level a lot easier by getting to shortcuts, much like high ground, much more easily just by bouncing off your teammates. Like it's a very satisfying thing to do in this strategy game that just feels completely different to the very 2-dimensional like Advanced War style levels. Like I just love like that idea that it's just forcing me to think in a lot more puzzle based way that I'm really enjoying so far. And the game, I'm finding some levels very tough and others not tough at all, but the levels are still quite short, sharp and sweet, where if I just mess up a level, it doesn't feel too bad to just redo the whole level. And maybe the levels will get longer as the game goes on, and I never enjoy that a ton in any kind of strategy games or even JRPGs, where they just make boss fights and levels longer and longer, and they use that as a almost not like a crutch, but like they will gain difficulty by being longer. I like trying to keep things short and sweet, and that's why I like a game like Into the Breach is actually very good. Like it keeps the levels shorter and sweeter, but sure, they get tougher, but the levels never get longer. And you can definitely make that argument for Advance Wars and Fire Emblem, where some of the later levels, later chapters, they just make them longer with piling tougher enemies on you. So
just big maps that you have to like slowly move your units across, and like it just takes time just because of the size of the space more so than anything.
Yeah, and I hope this game doesn't go in the same way. Like, is your squad limited to 4 throughout the whole game?
I believe so. Is it? I thought it was 3, but maybe it is.
It's currently 3. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess hopefully, it's limited to 3, which kind of forces the fact that hopefully a lot of these maps are quite small. And so far, almost all the maps have required me to defeat all the enemies, which feels satisfying and strategic, and I love it. Like I've got Luigi now who can like snipe. It's just incredibly satisfying, and it's a really, really lovely game. But like from a mechanical standpoint, it's fundamentally very well executed. But just from like a presentation standpoint, where Nintendo and Ubisoft coming together into this bizarre, warped Mushroom Kingdom world where the story doesn't really make any sense, and it doesn't have to. You're just basically laughing at Rabbids.
They get sucked into like a washing machine at the start, and suddenly they're there, Yeah.
And it's just zany in a really nice way, and the presentation is just kind of like, when you see the Mushroom Kingdom out of the Mushroom Kingdom in a game like, I don't know, Luigi's Mansion, it's like this. It's refreshing to see Mario characters done in a way that isn't just inside the Mushroom Kingdom with like a Mario Odyssey or something. Like it's just separate.
Yeah, it's a different team's take on that world, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. And there are certain, I think one of the cooler parts of, I don't know how you feel about like the kind of the walking around parts of the game, because like the game's split into overworld exploration where you're kind of guiding this little Roomba thing around spaces where you can do little puzzles and get treasure chests, and then you kind of enter specific areas where you do a fight and then you finish it and then you continue on. So
I like it because you're actually running through the levels that you're fighting in the strategy scene.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not being warped to a different imaginary world or whatever. It's like it is all linked, and it gives it a real sense of place, and I like that. It's weird, but it kind of works for this game. It's just such a bizarre game. Like you're running through these worlds, and you essentially reach like a checkpoint with 2 skull and crossbone flags, and then you walk through that, and then that's the battle started.
Just transitions into it.
Transitions in, and then at the end of that battle, you can then walk around the battlefield collecting some coins, and then moving on. It's truly bizarre in that sense, but it kind of works. And it's just a bizarre game. I'm really enjoying it. I know it's a very long game. I think it's like 25 hours or so. I reckon I'm like 5, 6, 7 hours in maybe, and I hope I don't burn out on the formula. I'm a bit nervous how long the game is, but it's very good so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest.
Yeah, I definitely heard from a few people that they thought it was a little longer than it needed to be. It definitely gets a bit more challenging later on. How have you found the difficulty as well? Because I think that's something that it feels, I think, in the early stages, like it balances things really nicely and maybe is like tuned a little on the easier side, but there's definitely like parts of the later sections that I remember. I think Patrick Lepping in particular talking about getting frustrated with the difficulty of it. So I've
not had any massive difficulty spikes so far. They've still been in there as early as I am. I wouldn't say it's an easy game. Some levels have definitely felt way easier than others. It is one thing that's a little strange is sometimes it feels like you're playing 2 or 3 levels before you get your health back, and other times it feels like you're playing 1 or 2 levels, and it's not always, they don't make it clear. You know that if you're fighting a boss, you're going to get your health back after, obviously, but other than that, it's not always clear, right, am I going to get my health back or not? And maybe, like, I do enjoy the fact that losing like a character and then moving on to another battle kind of forces you to utilize another character, because I've currently got 4 characters where I'm using 3, so it forces you to mix things up. I like that, so maybe it's good in that sense, but I'd like it to telegraph a bit more, okay, you've got 3 more battles before you get health back or something, and
it kind of maybe affects your play style and like how conservative you are in the first one versus like later on and stuff like that.
But it also like will have a little pop-up whenever you're down in health. It'll just say, do you want more health? And it's just like a gimme kind of like, basically it's like, do you want you're struggling a bit, do you want easy mode kind of thing? And it's like, I like that option where if I get to that point, like Patrick said, will I be stubborn and try and bash my head through the level without asking for that health? Perhaps, but at least I know that it's there, so I can, because there was a point in, for example, Codename Steam, I was like, this level is bullshit, I hate it so much, and there's not actually a way of me getting past this level. I just kind of had to like flub my way through the level, and it felt awful, but I eventually did it, and it took me like 7-8 times, and I was like, I hate this. So if I get to that point in the Rabbids level, the fact that big would you like some more health button is there is like, yeah, I'll take it this time, for God's sake, because stuff like that drives me insane.
No, I get it. Yeah.
So yeah, I like knowing it's there, but so far the levels have been short and concise enough where I'm like, I'm just going to replay the level and, strategize a bit better. I will say that like, this obviously came out in 2017. It is a very good looking game. However, like the Switch at this point in time, when it's rendering these bigger, more involved 3D games, I'm so spoiled as a console gamer now in 2022 with a PS5 and Series X, but the frame rate combined with just the resolution, and I'm playing handheld predominantly, it just looks, it runs at 30 and it's just a little bit blurry. It's just a little bit, and it's not actually blurry, it's just because I'm used to 4K, and it's just that I'm a bit nervous, not necessarily about this game. I think it looks great, but about what games will look like in the future, whether it's Breath of the Wild 2 or something else. Like, I'm worried about just the power of the Switch at this point in time. Like the disparity is just a little concerning right now, and this game kind of shows that off a little bit, but it's still a gorgeous looking game, and I look forward to hopefully wrapping up for next time. We'll see, but it's really cool so far. I need to try more strategy games. This is a really cool one.
Yeah, it's really good, and obviously there's that DLC that came out that I bought ages ago that I might try and play before next time as well. Okay. So maybe have a bit more of a chat about it.
And if I enjoy the rest, I'm definitely up for the sequel as well. Like, I think that'll be cool, having that to look forward to.
I'm definitely going to be day one on the sequel. Really love the first game, and it seems like from what they've shown so far of that sequel, they seems like they're streamlining a lot of stuff and maybe addressing some critiques that people had about the first game. And I'm really interested to see what that team can do, because it's been 5 years at this point, right? Because
that is wild, yeah.
It feels, a lot of people have been saying 2022, it's 2017 part 2, right? Where all the games that came out in 2017, we're going to get Mario plus Rabbids, we're going to get...
It's a good example of the length of development cycle these days, where like 5 years is kind of standard for those bigger games, even if they're just sequels, like that's quite shocking, where sequels used to be 1 year apart, now they're like 5 years apart.
Exactly.
That change feels like it's happened in the space of about a decade.
Totally, big games are just more expensive and harder to make, and it just continues to be a thing that's happening. And I mean, thank God for indies that just come out all the time, right? And just fill in those gaps. But I think, if we get Xenoblade 3 this year, that matches 2017, same as like Breath of the Wild 2. We'll see if it all pans out. I feel like there's still going to be a lot of delays. And
are you saying Mario Odyssey 2 is coming this year?
I didn't want to say it out loud about it. I don't want to curse it, but I have faith. Believe in Mario Odyssey 2.
Good chance.
Or at least whatever the Tokyo team is working on, right? Like
3D Donkey Kong.
Could be. Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you're playing that. I have gone down my own bullshit rabbit hole, my anime bullshit rabbit hole, let's call it. Where do I start? Okay, so AI the Somnium Files is a video game. It is a visual novel style game from the mind of... I don't know his first name, but Uchikoshi is his second name, and he is renowned in the visual novel space. He's the creator of the Zero Escape series, which are the games 999, which is short for 9 doors, 9 persons, 9 hours. I don't know the order of that. 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. Virtue's Last Reward and Zero Time Dilemma, which are kind of a trilogy of visual novel games that also have a lot of puzzle elements that are very well regarded. I remember, I think, back when I first started listening to RFN in like 2010, James Jones was talking about the original 999 on DS. So I've been aware of Uchikoshi's work for literally a decade and have not yet like jumped into his stuff, which is weird. You would think I would have done that already, considering how big a fan I have of stuff like Phoenix Wright and also Danganronpa specifically, because a lot of these games kind of share shared DNA in the sense of they are very twisty, very kind of like rich narratives that will really shock you and just have lots of moments of awe and surprise and reveals and stuff like that. And let me tell you, AI the Somnium Files is probably one of the best I've ever played. It comes with a lot of caveats, and we can get to those, but from a broad kind of level of the end of the game and the way in which its reveals happen, the way in which I was able to just piece things together right before the game gave it to me, and I was like, oh, that makes sense, and this because of that reason, and it all just fucking came together in this beautiful way that is one of my favorite like resolutions to a mystery that has ever been in a video game or any medium, really. Like, so on that level, I am incredibly impressed with this thing and had a great time playing through it. And I think one of the fun things about it was, on a whim, I decided on our Discord to be like, oh, I'm playing through this game. I know we have a few fans of the game and these types of games on our Discord. So I was like, I'm going to play through this and like write my thoughts up as I go through, give my theories and stuff like that, if in case anyone cares. And we've got a few folks on there who jumped in, and one person, Mirandum in particular, was also playing at the same time. And we were kind of like at the same point as well. So we were kind of like playing it every day, like back and forth and like trading theories and stuff like that, and just talking about the game. And it was a really fun way to do it, because I think part of the cool things of visual novels and these stories is because there are clearly going to be a lot of twists and turns to them, like trying to see what the foreshadowing is going to be and trying to understand like where things are going is a lot of fun. So that kind of added to the experience. But I guess just to bring it back to the level of like, what is the game? What is it about? It is a kind of a little bit into the future setting in Japan, and you play this detective called Kaname Date, and he has in his eyeball, one of his eyeballs is like a AI, and she's called Aiba, and she's like an assistant who talks to you. She's kind of like your detective partner, right? It's almost like a buddy cop thing. And you kind of come across this murder early on, and their eye has been taken out as well. There's a lot of eyes in this game. The word eye in Japanese means love as well, which is another kind of riff on it. The eyes being missing. There's a character called Iris. There's just a lot of motifs of eyes throughout this game, and like they're all kind of peppered through, and it's very much kind of part of the theming of it. But yeah, you basically find this woman who's been murdered, and in order to figure out what has happened, you enter the mind of her daughter, because her daughter was at the scene of the crime, and you find her like locked away in this carousel, and she's holding what looks like the murder weapon. So you're like, oh no, this could be bad. What's happened here? So you basically go into what is called a somnium. And a somnium is basically a dream. So you enter someone's dream, and a little bit like Inception, you kind of like go around there and try to piece out what happened. Everything's kind of weird and like ethereal and like a dream world.
I was wondering when this was going to get anime.
Yes, no, I mean, it got anime. Look, it got anime at the point of a detective with an AI in his head that's also his companion. But yes, you enter the kind of dream space, and this is where a lot of the kind of puzzle solving happens. So the game is, for the most part, like visual novel style. It reminds me a lot of Phoenix Wright, actually, because you will go to like an area and you'll decide, okay, I want to go to the warehouse. Go to the warehouse, and you can click on a bunch of different stuff in the background. Like, I'm just going to click on this shelf, and it will tell me something about the shelf. Usually it's just like you click on a chair and it's like, it's a chair, and that's it. But the thing is, sometimes these little things in the background that you click on will have extra pieces of dialogue associated with them. And so I did the thing where I was just clicking on every single thing every time I entered a new environment, which means I was just taking a long time with it. But I love doing that in Phoenix Wright games especially, and like because the game was rewarding me sometimes with these in-jokes and these references of like funny things that they call back to. Like there's a restaurant you go to called Sunfish Pocket, and there's a kitchen window that's like probably a bit hard to see, but if you click on it, sometimes you'll hear this chef in the background who's like, you fucking idiot, get out of this kitchen, and it's basically their riff on Gordon Ramsay. Basically they're just making fun of Gordon Ramsay, but you won't see that if you don't click on that, right? So I wanted to click on everything in the environment just to get these little pieces of storytelling, and also because the writing is really good and the characters were really fun. I just enjoyed hearing them just talk back and forth, and so there was a lot of incentive to do that. I think I lost my train. I was talking about the dream stuff, right? So when you're in these dream spaces, trying to figure out the murder, a lot of it is puzzle solving and just trying to see, okay, what is this thing that I need to do to unlock the next section of it? And because this is a visual novel, its stories kind of branch off into different directions. So sometimes in a Somnium, you'll have a choice. The first one is there are two cages, and you choose either the left or the right one. And that choice will have like a massive effect on what branch of the story you will go down, and as a result, like kind of your understanding of the events and what happens in what order you do it in. And the game doesn't kind of lock you off in any way, aside from there are certain moments where it does, where it's like you can't get past this. Reminds me a little bit of 13 Sentinels that did the same thing, where you can get really far down someone's story path and then the game's like, oh, we're going to block you here because if you go past here there'll be a bit of information that will kind of spoil it later on. So the game does lock you off at certain points, but for the most part you can kind of take whatever route you want, and yeah, the game accommodates to it, right? And so the route that I took early on is the route that I think a lot of people who had played the game would not necessarily recommend going down, but I actually really enjoyed it because it got me to connect with this one character who then becomes really important later on, and I think that connection kind of threaded through really nicely. So yeah, you're doing these puzzles that sometimes are a bit nonsensical and you don't really know what to do often. Sometimes, like your character Iba, who you control and you see her in the Somnium, she takes like a kind of what do they call VTuber? She kind of looks like a VTuber avatar almost form that she's kind of running around with, and you have to do stuff like, okay, the carousel is spinning, how do I stop it? Well, there's this parasol that's also spinning, maybe if I like hold on to that tightly it will also stop the carousel. Stuff like that is like related but also a little bit off kilter and hard to understand. So there are certain moments where I was like, I kind of just going to go to a guide for this because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. But also I think the game does this really clever thing where, because it knows you will sometimes be replaying sections because you're going back and branching paths to like unlock a different section of the game, if you hold down a trigger button it will just fast forward through that entire section. And so if you're redoing a Somnium, you can just be like, fast forward to the point where I need to do it, okay, go and do the thing, and then fast forward again. Really just convenient ways in order to do this stuff. Because I think for me, a lot of what intimidates me sometimes when I was hearing people talk about 999 is, oh, there are like 9 different endings and you have to like do this and this to get there. And I was like, oh, do I really want to like replay through stuff and that type of thing? But I think what AI the Somnium Files does is it is able to do that stuff, but it lets you bypass all the bullshit that you otherwise would have had to do to get there, which just makes it a much smoother experience. And so it makes you want to see everything, right? And to be honest with you, if you get to one ending in this game, you're not going to want to stop because there'll be too many questions unanswered and things left unsaid that you're like, okay, I got to an ending and that told me a bunch of stuff, but there's still the entire murder mystery that is left hanging and I still don't know who it was who did it. So I think it's not correct necessarily to call them endings. It reminds me a bit of Nier Automata, where it's like, okay, yeah, you can get to an ending, but that's not really what the game is, right? The real part of the game is doing every single part of it, getting to every branch, so that you get to this final resolution that is this big mind-blowing thing that...
And did you do all those branches to get to the big mind-blowing
thing?
thing?
Of course, yeah, because I mean, that's where credits roll, right? Like, credits do roll actually after every normal ending, but like you press the A button and it just puts you back to the map and it's like, now choose a different path. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend, like, if you're going to play this and just play through one ending, like, that's not what the experience is. I really think it's just a bit of a misnomer sometimes, and I feel like I wish there was a better way of games kind of signaling this stuff, but I think it's pretty clear, right, when you get to this game, that's what it's doing. I guess I need to talk about caveats with this game because it's maybe the fucking horniest game I've ever played in my life that's not like some hentai bullshit. Man, I don't know, like, some of it is... you could consider like funny. There's moments of like, okay, we're doing this action scene and your main character Date, like, he's like, oh my god, I love boobs, right? And so Iba is always tricking him with porno mags. She's like, oh, Date, there's a porno mag on the floor. And he's like, what? And because he's wants to see it so much, his brain functions at like 3 times faster than it would otherwise, which means he can duck and dodge out the way of a bullet that's coming his way. That type of stupid shit. So, also, you're in this like big action sequence and these guys are there. These are a bunch of dudes who are shooting at you. And Iba's like, okay, I need you to shoot this vending machine. And you're like, okay, shoot the vending machine, and out pours a bunch of porno mags. And so these dudes just like, oh wow, and they just stop, they put their guns down and they just start looking at it. And it's like, I mean, it's so stupid. Like, it is really dumb, and sometimes can be fun, but it's just like, I don't know, man. There's just a heavy heaping of anime bullshit in this game when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I don't know, I feel two ways about it. Like, in some senses, it's like, I just wish Japan would get with the times a little bit. And what I will say is there's actually like a section of this game that is like very LGBTQ plus positive, like in a really cool way. And there's a trans character in the game that is handled pretty well. I mean, considering it's a Japanese game, so like there are ways in which it's actually doing good stuff with this, but then also there's a receptionist with massive boobs, and you can just keep clicking on her, and Date will just be like, boobs, breasts, giant tatas, like that type of stuff, right? And you can keep clicking on her forever and ever, and it's just absurd, man. It's just so stupid. And then sometimes there's a scene in a fucking Yakuza office where this guy's like, oh, he's in love with this pop idol girl who's with you, and he's like, Date, come over to the side, I need to ask you something. And he's like, Date, I need to ask her, can I sniff her panties? And it's just like, what the fuck, game? Like, what are you doing? It's so stupid, and in bad taste in a lot of ways. So I think with a lot of these games, those caveats are there, and you know, we have to be aware of problematic shit in our video games, even if we do love them a lot. And yeah, I guess I'm just putting that out there because if you are averse to that stuff, there's a heavy amount of it in this game, and it's not great. But what I will say is that if you ignore that for a second and just focus on the fact that like this is a really well told mystery story with great writing, really cool characters, like really great character moments, like some surprisingly emotionally resonant stuff at the end of some of these routes, that makes characters who you otherwise would have thought of as dumb like resonate in a really strong way, and yeah, I think it looks really nice as well. I'm a fan of anime aesthetics in games, depending on how well they're done, and this one is really good looking. It's very pretty, and feels premium, you know. It feels like a bit more budget than your regular visual novel has, like full 3D character models, and environments and that sort of stuff, and everything is voiced, like even the dumb stuff where you click in the background, that's all voiced as well. So it really creates this great connection point to the characters, and yeah, and I think the puzzle solving is fun. It kind of breaks up the flow of the game, and I really loved it. I think it is one of my favorites I have played for sure, caveats and all. So yeah, AI the Somnium Files definitely has engraced me into the fandom of Uchikoshi, and now I will try to find all those other games of his, the Nonary games and the Zero Escape games, and play through those at some point. So looking forward to it. And this resulted in, after talking through this on Discord, the creation of the Anime Bullshit channel on Discord. So now if you want to go and talk about anime bullshit, you can go do that there. So there you go.
Excellent.
Cool. Bally, what have you been playing that wasn't Mario plus Rabbids? Because you had something else that you had been checking out.
Yes, I've been playing the game Lake that came out late-ish last year, and it's not on Switch yet, but it is coming to Switch. I think it will probably come to Switch this year, but we shall see. I played this game on my Series X on Game Pass, and you play as a character called Meredith, who basically... she is called by her father, who says, hey, I'm going on holiday for a couple of weeks, but I'm a postal worker, so do you want to come and cover my shifts? And then she's like, sure, I'll take a holiday to work where you're working, which is maybe like the most American thing ever. Just like, I'm going to work on my holiday. So you basically, it's a kind of like, not visual novel, what's like a...
It's like a walking simulator,
like a
right?
walking simulator. You're talking to characters, and the other thing you're doing in this game is you're driving around delivering mail, and that's basically all you're doing in this game. It's character interactions, and it's driving around delivering mail, and you're there for 2 weeks, and essentially it's just really chill, and it's just a great vibes kind of video game. And yes, there's like a number of different plot lines that aren't overly dramatic or anything, but there's potential romances you can have, and there's other characters that say, oh, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Or these kind of things. You have to make choices, but they're all very gentle, and it's just about the relaxing times you're having, essentially being a postal worker, because your job at home, Meredith's job at home, she normally lives in the city, and she's working in computers. And they say working in computers because this game is set in like the mid-early 80s, where that's the term to anyone working with computers, was you're working in computers, and that's just how everyone describes it. So this is you trying to have like a slightly more chilled life for 2 weeks. What's it like being away from the city and living by this, I can't remember the name name of the town, but it's like just this chilled town.
It's like the start of Stardew Valley, where you give up your corporate job to go make a farm, you know?
Exactly. It's just this chill lake, and all you're doing is delivering mail and interacting with characters. And
it doesn't seem like there's any kind of twist in this game, right? Because I think a lot of people were scared beforehand of like, oh, okay, yeah, they're saying it's like this, but there's clearly going to be a serial killer or something on the loose, right? Like, but it feels like it doesn't like lean into that territory, or at least maybe for fear of spoilers.
So the most dramatic plot line that builds up is like it involves law breaking. I'll say that. But I won't say more than that. It's not. I'm not trying to hype up like it's actually going to be something really big. It's very minor law breaking, and it can build in different ways. This game does have like a number of endings based on what your view of your relationships are with these characters and your view of the lake, and the lake versus your job. For example, like, you kind of have these little scenes at the end of every evening. So, because you're playing 2 weeks worth, and you are literally playing 14 days, as it were. I think it's slightly less days, because I don't think you work on a Sunday. So you're playing like 12 days or so. And at the end of every day, you'll have like a phone conversation with either like your parents who are on holiday in Florida, or your boss who is like trying to get you to do all this work while you're on holiday, which is also just the most American thing I can think of. And he constantly bugs you and is just like, hey, have you looked at those files yet? Have you done this thing yet? And you're just like, no, I'm just chilling, being a postal worker, so you can get lost. And you can tell them to get lost, or you can say, yeah, I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. And then all these things have repercussions, and very, very simple, going down paths kind of storylines, which is all great. But I think the writing's actually pretty good, and I think Meredith as well, voice acted, and some of the characters are hammier than others. But I really, really, really enjoyed just the chill vibes of listening to the radio. Like, I'm not one of these people who's ever played like the old GTA games, and everyone goes on about, yeah, just driving around LA listening to the radio. I never really played any games like that, so having this game where it's got its own original soundtrack, I should say, and there's maybe like 6, 7, 8 songs, and it's a number of songs on the radio where if you have your radio on all the time like I did in this game, you're going to start learning those words and like humming along and like really feeling those songs. And they're all kind of like general American, generic country and Western kind of songs, but I think they are just really nice for this game. And I never wanted to turn the radio off, because I was like, here we go. And I'd start my shift in the morning, be like, here's my favorite song again. And it's just that kind of job simulator style kind of thing that you're doing.
Is there a host on the radio, or is it just rolling the songs one into another?
No, there is a host for sure.
Nice.
And it's just really relaxing, really nice. And compared to like I played a game like Tell Me Why, where there is a bit more drama, and it still has chill vibes in that game. There's something about breaking up the conversations through the driving around this town delivering the mail in basically like a mini open world, like, that just really brings it all together. Like, it makes it very satisfying. Like, there is something about the process of farming in a game like Stardew Valley that if that game was just the character interactions, it'd be a very different game. Like, there's something about in the way that you working as a postal worker in this game, and this is arguably storytelling unique to video games, who'd thunk it, but like, it's, you're carrying out that job, and then people are commenting on your job and how you're finding that experience. And you can actually answer these questions very honestly about how relaxing or how stressful that experience is based on your own experience of actually driving around in this world and delivering the post. So like, I loved that about it. And this game didn't get the best like meta scores and things, but I actually think it's like just doing something fairly unique in like, it's taking very simple aspects of video games but putting two together in a unique way that I just really, really liked. And
feels like it's hitting that wholesome vibe that everyone's kind of trying to about right now.
Very wholesome. Like, there's nothing overly bad going to happen. You have to make some decisions about things, but they're very natural life decisions that feel very honest and true to what this game is.
Yeah.
And this game's a little bit buggy. It ran pretty well on my Series X, but like, there's some animations where the mail doesn't register and you have to go back to the back of your truck to pick up the right thing, and it's just a bit like, it only happened like 2 or 3 times, but it was a bit annoying, and hopefully they can iron that out for like a Switch version. But Lake, I think this was just there's not enough just really genuinely relaxing games that just you can really just properly relax. And I think
Yeah.
anyone would find this game relaxing. I don't think there's like something hidden in this game that's suddenly stressful to some
Yeah.
gamers and not others. This is
Feels just like a really self-contained character story. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
and it's only like 6 hours long. And like I said, it's 14 days, but you're playing 12 days worth. And each day took me like, depending on the number of interactions in that day, it was like between half an hour and 40 minutes. Or maybe some of them were like 20, 25 minutes. Like it's just a really, and you are driving literally around the entire lake. Like there are people that live in more like densely populated areas and then people that live out in the outskirts. And just, I'd always be like, right, I'm going to do all the densely populated people first and then do the outskirts. And then by the end of the game, I realized actually it's maybe more fun to do the outskirts first, because I liked having that extra stretch of time just listening to the radio every morning that I wasn't getting when I delivered to the densely populated areas.
Right.
So like I got into my own routine by the end of the game, and it's
really cool.
It's things like that just, it's a really nice way to tell the story that it's telling. And you know, I wish this game had made more waves, but I think it's important that people know it's out there, and hopefully it can do well on Switch. Yeah, Lake, don't miss it. It's a nice one.
It kind of is reminding me a little bit of a game I played last year, Wide Ocean Big Jacket. That is a much shorter kind of one of these, but it is a similar vibe of, it's a kind of narrative game where you're not really doing much mechanically. It's very light, but it's very much a character story, and digs into just like people's lives and what's going on, and just this kind of one point in these characters' histories.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely kind of resonating on that in that way. So I probably will check this out at some point.
No, definitely do.
Yeah,
cool.
Very good. Cool. Well, that is going to wrap us up for the first segment of the show. Don't go anywhere, however, because we'll be back after the break to answer some of your emails. See you in a bit.
Teacups that are flying on maps mystifying. You'll think that I'm lying. This old tale of mine, a journey through time. A permanent fire, cold frost on the pyre. Fruit never expires. You've seen in your eyes. You've seen in your mind. While the old bow their heads, while the blind leave the blind, the marble loses shine, the eye clouds by design. But we know in our soul the one hope, the one truth, that if we believe we can make miracles. Even with the devils of time against you, never let the fire fade in you. See the golden goddess with wings of rainbows set sail through the night sky to embrace you. Resist, allow your heart to take you. Never let the scars of this world erase you. Passing down the light of the torch to guide you, and you shall be bathed in light.
Hello and welcome back to the second part of today's show. It is time for your emails. But before we get to emails, we've got to plug that address. We're running a little bit low. It's been holiday season. We've been doing predictions, but now we're kind of needing some emails. So please send your emails, your correspondence to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We would appreciate your comments, your questions, or you can leave a comment, a question in our Discord server. Link to that in the show notes. You can join our community. It's a fun old time over there. We're growing steadily. We've got some chat going on.
Talk about anime bullshit with
me. You
me.
can talk about anime bullshit with MBZ. What more could you possibly want? Our first email this time is from Carl L, who says, "Hey guys, hope you are both well and your backlogs are getting smaller." They are always getting smaller.
And
on
larger
to my question.
at the same time.
Pardon?
Larger at the same time, smaller and larger.
Always,
That's how it
they're
works.
getting smaller, they're getting larger, and then they're just stagnating at about 40 odd games for me. But anyway, on to my question, says Carl. Do you think the difficulty of Metroid Dread will affect the sales of Prime 4? I played Metroid Dread and I loved it, but I did find it a challenge, but in a good way. I got to the final boss, but I know I will never beat his feathered ass. My gaming skill has decreased as has my patience and gaming time. I've accepted this and I'm more than happy to watch the ending on YouTube and move on to the next game. I'm sure there are many people whose first Metroid game was Dread due to the Switch effect and positive word of mouth around the game. I'm sure a high percentage of people will not finish the game due to the difficulty level. Do you think this will stop these people buying Prime 4, and should Nintendo patch in an easy mode? Take care, Carl.
Thanks, Carl, for the email. I also just want to point out, Bally, you always get on my case for, pulling out Americanisms,
Here we go.
You read the word arse as ass. So I just want to point out that Carl did say
arse,
feathered
ass.
arse. So just put that
That
out there.
is a fair comment.
There you go. Anyway, I love a good feathered arse. Anyway, we obviously talked a lot about Metroid Dread, and it was up in that Game of the Year conversation. It was my personal Game of the Year last year, and I think part of the thing that I did love about it was how difficult it was in a way. I obviously really enjoyed Fusion for its bosses and all that stuff, and kind of the challenge of getting through it, even if as a young kid I wasn't really able to, and had to get Philip from Germany to help me get past some of those bosses back in the day. I kind of thrived off of it, and I really enjoyed it, but there was a lot of chatter about difficulty, and it's a thing that keeps cropping up. Like every year there will be a game that's like, okay, we're having the difficulty conversation again, whether it's a From Software thing. We're a couple of months away from Elden Ring. Set your clock,
again.
people. Twitter will be talking about difficulty once more as soon as that game comes out, because that's just how things have been the past few years. And I think the introduction of stuff like assist modes and just difficulty settings has only been a good thing. But I'm interested in this knock-on effect thing. Do you think, Bally, that this kind of reputation of Metroid Dread being super hard will turn off a segment of the audience who, when another Metroid game comes out, will be like, that last one people thought was hard, I'm not going to get into this one because of that reason?
Yeah, I think there will be a certain segment who will probably identify the two games as seeing that they're both in the Metroid series. Therefore, if one was hard, the other will be hard. In my opinion, the Prime series is so different, and I think I've only played like the first two Prime games, but I think they are still pretty challenging games, and I'd argue that their challenge is some of the weakest aspects of that game. And what I mean by that is Metroid Prime is at its worst when it just turns into a first-person shooting game. And what I mean is, like, yes, there are some really well-designed boss fights in the Prime series, but I always think that boss fights in 2D Metroid, generally speaking, are just better because it's that kind of 2D platform action kind of genre that I think fits what Metroid goes for better. And when Metroid Prime is forced to be, monster closets of enemies just coming at you, and it turns into a first person shooter and you're just shooting them, or you've got a big boss that you're having to, don't get me wrong, there are some really incredible boss fights in the Metroid Prime series, but a lot of the boss fights do just feel a bit kind of, this isn't the highlight of the game in a way that I think they often are in the 2D games. And that's because like the Prime games, the highlight for me is the pacing and the atmosphere. And these are actually things where the challenge comes not from, your Twitch fibers. They comes from just puzzles and exploration and having an understanding of like the way the world is laid out. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of people will think Metroid, 2D Metroid and 3D Metroid very similar, but ultimately I think they are such different games that have a very tangential link in the fact that they are in the same world and are obviously canonically linked. Because when Prime is difficult, it is not good. When 2D Metroid is difficult, it's really good, in my opinion. Like, I think, yes, of course, I think if Metroid Prime 4 is too easy, I wouldn't enjoy that as much. And I do like a challenge, even if it does become a bit overly first-person shooty. But I'm excited for Prime 4 because of the world and the atmosphere and the music and seeing like the visor reflections. I'm excited for that design, and that's something that you just can't get with 2D Metroid. So the difficulty discussion becomes much more complicated with the Prime series. I think it's maybe arguably a little simpler with 2D, and of course Nintendo should patch in an easy mode to Dread, and I think that is something that definitely holds the game back for many people who I know, judging from the circles I listen to, are just like, yeah, that final boss is ridiculously hard. And I don't think I've had that feeling in Kingdom Hearts 3 where I get to that final boss, I can't beat it, I give up, I watch the ending on YouTube, and it is what it is. But I'd rather beat that game on easy myself, and I wasn't able to change the difficulty. So like, games need to have that. I hope Nintendo learn their lesson from Dread and include some easy mode in Prime 4, because I want Prime 4 to appeal to people who do find a lot of games like that challenging, because they can still explore that world and have a really good time. And if I want them to be able to do that without feeling like they're not good enough to beat a lot of the enemies and monster closets in that game, because I do fear that might hold people back from that game if that's what reviews suggest it might be.
But Bally, if they patch in an easy mode, what would they do with the amiibos that refill your health and ammo every day?
Is that confirmed for
I
Prime
heard a lot
4?
of people actually doing that, of like, okay, stuck on this boss, let's just load up a bunch of fucking amiibos and hit the pause menu and then just load them in as soon as I get to low health so that I can get through this fight. Yeah, that stuff kind of sucks, I will say. But I agree with you, right? Like, they should definitely consider difficulty options, and I think this is just a broad problem with Nintendo as a company, is their accessibility just across the board that we always talk about. They're like, look, we will curate the experience for you. We're Nintendo. Look, we know best how you want to play a video game, okay? So you cannot rebind these controls. You cannot, do this specific thing where you have to use motion controls in this specific case. Like, it's going to be necessary for this one thing in Mario Odyssey. If you want to do it, you have to use the motion controls, right? Like, there are parts of their design that they are very much like, they are the auteur designer of, like, they don't want you to deviate from it, and it really hurts them in cases like this. And I think difficulty level is a part of that accessibility conversation, right? And they never really have them in their games, right? Any Zelda game you can think of, I guess Breath of the Wild is the first one where they patched in like a hard mode, but there's no easy mode for Breath of the Wild, really. And same with, Mario games, and they add like some things. There's, in the past, they've had their kind of their Tanuki invincibility suit, but like some of those things I feel like are a bit going too much the other way, where it's like invincibility almost, that's not like an accessibility. It's like there's no middle ground for them, basically.
Yeah, I think Breath of the Wild is a great example where, I would want a kid to be able to just explore that world without having to worry about enemies, and call it easy mode, call it whatever you want, but like that world, there should be an ability to explore that world without the stress of enemies.
Yeah, no threat. Yeah, it's like Minecraft playing in crafting mode as opposed to survival mode, right?
Totally,
like,
and it's such an amazingly designed world, that Breath of the Wild world, that I'd want everyone to be able to experience it. And as it stands, that's not arguably possible, because there'll be plenty of gamers out there who find the level of difficulty for enemies just that little bit too tough. And that sucks, because it's just such an awesome world to explore. And that's another fear I have for Prime 4, although I guess it's aimed at a slightly different audience. But like, I think Prime 4 is going to be fantastic for its exploration and all these other things I said that's unique to Prime. And if they stick in too many difficult enemies, that could really ruin the experience for a lot of people, unless they put in an easy mode.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess back to the conversation of like, will it stop people from buying Prime 4? I think what we have to remember is that the internet has an incredibly short memory, and by the time Prime 4 comes around and people are like, oh, how was that last Metroid game? The only thing that people will remember was that it was good, right? It was very good, and people liked it, and people will be like, oh, that last Metroid game was good, so this one will be good, And I think that's a more likely scenario than people remembering how hard it was, right? Because I think a lot of these conversations boil down to, like, what was the most... what was the thing that kind of stuck in the collective memory? And like, sure, those difficulty conversations happened, but at the end of the day, the conversation was, this is a fantastic game that people really liked. And I think that probably does a lot more to bolster the sales of Prime 4 rather than hurt them. I think a lot more people are now interested in Prime 4 because Dread kind of opened the door for them to get into the series. So I think it actually is going to have the opposite effect, right? Like, people aren't going to call back to that moment in time and be like, oh yes, this is what the discussion was, because all these conversations, they happen, and then predictably they happen again, and they happen again, and people just forget they happen, and we have the same arguments over and over, right? Like, it's why fanboys continue to exist. It's like they existed back with Sega and Nintendo, they exist today with Xbox and Sony. Like, it's the same thing repeated. We never learn from history, basically, is the point. So yeah, I think it'll be fine.
One last point I'd make is that I think difficulty comes in different forms in different games, and I think the skill set required to play 2D Metroid is just such a different skill set required to the Prime series that even if it is difficult, or even if someone struggled with Dread, it doesn't mean they're going to struggle with Prime 4, even if it's a challenging game. It's like, it's a very different style of game, and I wouldn't. If you struggle with Dread, don't rule out Prime 4. Even if people say it's hard, because it's just such a different skill set. So
exactly, yeah. It's like, there are certain genres for me where I want to play them on easy because I'm not very good at them, and there are certain ones where I prefer the difficulty to be higher. And yeah, I agree. Like, fundamentally, in terms of a design language, like Prime and Dread are similar, but in terms of actually controlling the character and moving around a space, they are vastly different. So yeah, it's a completely different skill set for sure. But yeah, it's a shame that people weren't able to finish Dread, like you, Carl, like not being able to actually do it yourself. Like, I've definitely had that before. I think Dust and Elysian Tale is the best example of this, where the final boss had like 4 phases, and I kept getting to the 4th one and dying, and I was like, oh, this is a waste of my time. I don't want to do this anymore. And you just keep beating your head against it till you're just like, same with you and Bloodstained at End of Ritual of the Night, right? It's just like, I just don't want to do this, and you just end up watching on YouTube, and like, I know it shouldn't feel bad, because like, who really cares if you finished a video game? The only person judging yourself is yourself. But
it's still it's hard not to. I always am left with a really sour taste in my mouth, even if I've enjoyed the rest of the game. Like, I'm just left like, damn it, that was annoying. Like that. That sucks. And yeah, it shouldn't. And you can look up the cutscene online and essentially not miss any of the game, but it still sucks. And it needs to change. So yeah. But good question, Carl. I think that is an interesting idea going forward, and how people are going to feel about Prime 4.
Mm-hmm.
Our next email is from Tim, who's from Wisconsin. Says, I have a somewhat of a meta question this time. We love the meta questions. We absolutely love them.
We live in the metaverse, pal. It's my favorite place to live.
I teach high school, ages 14 to 18 here in the United States, and from my conversations with my students and their answers to one of my start of year survey questions about their favorite video games, it seems like the current teenage generation rarely plays single player games. I love this idea that you put out a survey to students and say what games you play. The favorite games survey question is nearly universally answered as either a sports franchise like 2K especially, but some Madden and FIFA, or more likely a popular online multiplayer game, COD, Warzone, Fortnite, Minecraft, etc. A lot of them only play mobile games and don't own any consoles. This seems a lot different than when I was in high school and university 10-ish years ago. I'm just a year or 2 younger than you guys. Multiplayer online games were starting to get more popular. I began playing League of Legends at this time, and a lot of my friends, if they weren't playing League 2, were playing Halo or COD online. But we also still played single-player games, both Nintendo franchises like Pokemon and Zelda, and PlayStation Xbox franchises like Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, and Dark Souls. This time in my life influenced my gaming preferences. I still play the same mix, mostly single-player games with a little online multiplayer now and then, mostly to catch up with old friends. So the big question finally is this: do you think this trend in today's teens will affect gaming in the future? In 10 years, will the current teens have started playing single player games in their 20s and this multiplayer exclusivity is just a phase? Or will they continue to play online multiplayer only and the single player games will be made exclusively for us 30 and 40 somethings who will remember the good old days? I wonder and worry how this might change the industry going forward. Of course, maybe I'm just becoming the cynical old man as I approach 30, complaining about kids these days, and you guys don't see the same trends. Either way, interested to hear your thoughts, and as always, thanks for a great show, Tim.
Well, big question.
Ooh,
interesting.
Can of worms right there.
Thanks, Tim. It's interesting that you did this survey and that's kind of what you got back, because that's kind of what I would expect, and given my limited kind of, like, I worked with kids for a period of time, and that is generally the answer of like, what video games are you into? Well, it's Fortnite.
You worked with similar ages as well, right?
Yeah, well, no, a bit younger actually, younger than that, kind of the, I guess, 8 to like, or maybe like even small, like 5 to 12 or so.
Okay.
So like like the new, even like younger than Gen Z, whatever the hell that generation is. I don't even know if we're past Gen Z yet. I don't know what the timelines are.
Good question. I don't know.
But yeah, it was very much like that type of stuff. Every now and again, you'd have the kid who was like, I've got a Switch and I'm playing Zelda or Mario. And then sometimes there was that one kid who was like, I played Dead Cells. And I'm like, I want to have a chat with you. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. But yeah, for the most part, it is that type of experience. I think it comes down to the few factors of like, what is accessible to you and what are your friends doing, right? And if the thing that is most accessible is going to be what your friends are doing, which is playing Fortnite on your phone, then that's going to be what you'll gravitate towards. The same way as when we were at school and everyone had Game Boys and everyone was playing Pokemon, right? Like that just informed a lot of what our taste was when we were younger, because that's what the crowd was playing, and therefore that's kind of what you get into because of the crowd that you exist within. But in terms of like how it will affect them going forward, I'm curious actually, because I do think that there is definitely like there's still a lot of hype around these big single player games that come out, and they're only getting more and more popular. And I think in a weird way, those games are almost appealing to an older generation who almost like missed out on video games. I think stuff like Last of Us actually calls to a generation who like movies and TV and are getting into games via experiences that are most similar to that, which I guess is kind of talking of like our generation will kind of gravitate towards that. But I do wonder, like, as people get older and as they have families and they like don't have as much time for video games, what is it that they find the time for? Is it that they spend 3 nights a week playing Sea of Thieves with their friends? Is it that they only have little bits of time between playing video games to play something on their phone, right? And I do think that a lot of what this younger generation coming up has done will inform what they do going forward. This is also kind of a conversation just like in the indie space at the moment, and kind of a little like sections in with what I do is a lot more indie devs and a lot more publishers are looking at the indie space as a way to start having games become more games as a service, like having them expand more into multiplayer spaces, or like having options to continue the life cycle of a game, because it's just becoming the thing that's doing well, right? There's a game that you will have heard of called Human Fall Flat Valley, that is one of those games that I was like, oh yeah, that came out, I'm sure that did okay. It has sold, I think, in the realm of 30 million copies, which is astonishing. And part of that game's success is that it has continued to add stuff, make it multiplayer, like add things that people can do online, like Grand Theft Auto Online, right? Just having a kind of living space, a metaverse, if you will, that people continue to come back to and continue to play a game like that. And I didn't know about that success of Human Fall Flat until I kind of got into the industry and was talking to people about it. But that success is what I think a lot of people want to replicate right now, and that is inevitably leaning towards a more multiplayer focused, more games as service focused approach. So if anything, it feels like the industry continues to go in this direction when it comes to the stuff that makes the most money at the end of the day, right? When we talk about League of Legends or Call of Duty or all those franchises, ultimately, like, Valorant is making way more money than Sony made from selling God of War, right? It's just a fact. And I think because of that, because that's where the money is, that's where the people are, that's where it will continue to go. So it is a trend right now, but I think it will continue to be one, which does make me think, circling back to the question, that they will still be playing online games into the future, and that's just going to be the thing that is the most popular. But I don't know. What do you think, Bally?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to this. I think it's important to kind of think about the fact that as a gaming body, as a human race, there are so many age categories. And I think each age category, arguably, as you get younger, the percentage of people playing games gets higher. So like we're now in the 30-year-old age category, and after we are probably one of the highest gaming categories in terms of percentage of people our age playing games. Yeah. But the only age generations who are probably higher than us are those people in their 20s, and maybe you don't count the sort of 10 to 20 year olds. But I reckon if you count the 40 to 50 year olds, they will be considerably fewer than we are, and likewise the 50 to 60 year olds will be even fewer, and then 60 to 70 even fewer than that. So like as a population, like we are playing more games. Our generation, in my opinion, will always play a similar number of games throughout life. Now, yes, some people come in and out of the hobby, and with kids and family and life circumstance changes. But ultimately, I think the percentage of people our age who play games it's not going to, if you're already still playing games when you're 30 years old, I don't think you're going to arguably play considerably fewer games by the time you're 40, 50, 60.
It's not a phase you grow out of, right?
It's not a
Like,
phase you grow out of.
I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you'll stop playing video games at one point, but it's like...
And that's based on the fact that traditionally, like, older people never played games because when they were younger, they didn't have games.
Exactly.
And at that point in time, 20, 30 years ago, it was only younger people playing games. Right now in 2022, that's just not the case. Like the average age of people listening to this show right now, I think our YouTube stats show it's like 25 to 35 year olds. Like there's still a huge audience for that game. And I think it's important to remember there's huge audiences for lots of different types of games. The Sony AAA Critical Darling is a great example where these games are just selling more. They're not selling less. And yes, I would argue I'm probably the average age of the sort of person who picked up and enjoyed Last of Us Part 2, arguably. Like, I'm roughly in that category, but there'll be plenty of people older than me who enjoyed that game, plenty of people younger, and that game still sold gangbusters. We have Last of Us coming to HBO. We've got Last of Us Remake potentially rumored down the line. Like, there is still a huge audience for that single-player focused, often cinematic experience that is so far from the kind of multiplayer thing. I mean, we might have factions on the way, but ignore that point. But there's going to be loads of single player games coming down the line that will sell very well. And in conjunction with this, there's still going to be the younger audience, the under 25s, the 15 to 18 year olds who are going to be playing tons more of still like Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, and all the other mobile games and smaller things and other multiplayer stuff that I've never heard of, and I can't even, now I sound really old when I talk about it. So like, I think the market is so segmented, and this idea that kids play games and adults don't is becoming less and less and less and less the case. And as a result, that's probably one of the main reasons why the gaming industry is growing at the rate that it is, because the people who were playing games are still playing games, and the people who are too young to play games before are now coming of an age where they can actually play games. And yes, those games are not always going to be console based and not always going to be single player, but there's always going to be an audience for console. There's always going to be an audience for single player games, as long as these people who have enjoyed games like Last of Us are still alive, and they're going to be alive for another 40 years. So I think there's probably going to be an audience for them for a very long time to come, as much as the industry is going to keep changing and accommodating the younger gamers who, as you say, are far more multiplayer, let's play a game and hang out with friends kind of gamers.
Yeah, and then you have this weird kind of intersection of the two with a game like Genshin Impact, which is ostensibly like a prestige single-player game that's also a multiplayer game, that's a games as a service, that's a gacha thing that people continue to play, but when they continue to play, it's continuing a story that is being doled out in like a chapter format that is single-player stuff, but you can also hop on and play it with your friend at the same time. Like, it's wildly popular, like absurdly popular, one of the biggest money makers on mobile, but also just on console and PC. Like, one of my cousins is very into Genshin Impact and just plays it a ton, and that's a free game, and that is like, it hits kind of the sensibilities of like, it's open to everybody, it's free, younger people are into it, it has like an anime aesthetic that a certain audience like, but also I think it's wide enough and like polished enough and pretty enough that a lot of people get interested regardless of their preference for that stuff. But like, it's not a traditional competitive multiplayer game, and I think the more things happen in the industry, the closer we'll start to get to this blending of the two, right? Where you get a massive game like Genshin Impact that is this ongoing story that continues to expand and grow, but you can just play it on your own and never interact with another human, which is just different. And I think that's just probably going to be the most important thing, is like, as these people who grow up, and they played those types of games when they were younger, they're going to have new experiences that will speak to them that might be based on those, but might also open them up to something new and get them into, I imagine there's someone out there who played Genshin Impact and was like, this Breath of the Wild thing seems quite similar. How about I check that out? And I guarantee you that's happened, right? Where someone has played that on PC and they've been, tempted to buy a Switch, and then they buy one and they play Breath of the Wild as a result, because Genshin Impact is very similar. So I think there's a lot of crossover that can happen with all the different parts of the industry. And do we think that that it's going to be the same thing in 10 years' time? I don't think so. I think everything, like, if you look at the last 10 years, it probably feels like not much has changed, but I think there has been significant changes just across the board. If we talk about, like, the way that companies treat their franchises, of, like, they don't just want a one and done video game anymore. Nobody does. Like, the rumors, especially, like, this kind of ties into Genshin Impact. Ubisoft are going to do Assassin's Creed Infinity, which is supposedly going to be an ongoing, never-ending Assassin's Creed game. Is that going to be free to play? Maybe. Like, if they want it to have the widest reach possible, then they'll put it on phones and, like, try and maybe take the Genshin Impact route with it. Or even, what's it called? Oh, I can't remember the name now. But there's definitely ways in which these companies are trying to take those models and map them in ways that make it more popular. And same with Halo, right? Halo's an example of, here's this multiplayer thing that's kind of classic multiplayer thing. Let's see if these younger kids are into this kind of classic arena-based shooter that also has a single-player campaign that's going to continue to be updated and evolved and has a battle pass, and there'll be more campaigns coming to it, but it's also multiplayer. It's like everything is everything, right? And I think that's kind of where things are going. It's all going to blend together.
I think it's very interesting that nothing's really completely faded away. And that's one of the benefits of the market only getting larger is, when I was at university, we were playing COD, we were playing Halo, we were playing, well, I didn't play Minecraft, my pals played Minecraft, but and here we are 10 years later, those games are still huge. And it's, sure, maybe their market share has changed or declined slightly, I don't even know, but, like, it's still, these games are still a big deal. And when the market is always getting bigger, the demand is just for more games, not fewer. And sure, there have been series that have died off, arguably, but you could at this point you can never really rule out anything not coming back. Like, we've had so many returns of games that were from 15, 20 years ago sometimes that have got a new brand new polish on them, and they've come out again, or they've done something to them, a reboot or some other thing. So, like, I don't think anything is really truly gone, and it does genuinely feel like we're only ever adding ideas and types of games to the video game space, and we're very rarely just, like, blanketly cutting out a type of game. Like, sure, there are trends, but when that market's just getting bigger, and the market getting bigger is not just to do with kids coming of age, it's also to do with the fact that, like, games are now being played far more by countries like China, and that's a good example with, like, Genshin Impact, MBZ, where the second you open up an audience of up to 1 billion people to play games, you're going to have more games and more ideas, and the industry's just going to keep growing.
Did you know that half of the sales of It Takes Two were in China?
Right.
Yeah. It's massive. It's a huge market.
Exactly. And that's a game that you wouldn't associate with this kind of massive multiplayer. But it's not like this massive multiplayer game in the same way. It's arguably closer to a game like A Last of Us or something, even though it's single player, but it's cooperative.
It's a story. It's a story-driven single player game, except you have two people playing it. Yeah,
right.
It is.
And I think that's only going to get bigger. And even in the last 10 years, I think one thing you can definitely say is that the Uncharted Last of Us style of game has only gotten bigger, like, in the last 10 years. That's what Sony, and that's partly because Sony's focused on it a lot more. But
it's also because Sony have been kind of the winner of the generations a lot, They've
been the winner, but they wouldn't be investing so damn hard into that type of game if it wasn't a very successful type of game, or at least they saw that it was the aspect that was kind of growing the most out of all the types of games that they make. Like, there's a lot of good reasons why they're chasing, Last of Us remake. We're probably going to get, we're getting Horizon Forbidden West soon. We're getting God of War sequel this year. Like, these, it's very, to them, that is their bread and butter of, this is how PlayStation makes money, is getting people to buy these games. And that doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon. And that's important to me personally, because I love those types of games. But we've not even talked about the indie scene. That's something that has changed massively from 10 years ago, I'd argue. And that's also got, it's not as big, it's not as impactful, arguably, as all these other...
Well, it depends what you're talking about, right? Among Us was one of the biggest games in the world last year.
Well,
right?
Totally, exactly, totally. And I think Among Us is a great example where, the indie space can suddenly become just a juggernaut in that same way. And for gamers like us, it's those indie games that make up the majority, arguably, of new releases, because one thing that's changed in the last 10 years is the development cycles of the AAA games, and as a result, we're probably still seeing more AAA games, but that's because there's more development studios. It's not because the development studios are getting any quicker, because they're getting much, much slower, all for very good reasons, because these games are getting more and more complicated and expensive to make. So yeah, indies are just a much bigger deal. And yeah, I'm sure I'd be interested how do we persuade these young guns out there to play a few more indie games, if they know what's good for them.
I mean, yeah, I think like there are certain games like Stardew Valley, which is like massive, and that I think a lot of people have played, and I do think that a lot of those successes, right, if you think about what are the biggest indie games of the last couple of years, Among Us, Valheim, Fall Guys, like what do these have in common? They're all multiplayer games. They're all social games. And that I do think that, yes, there's still a healthy market for single player stuff, but at the end of the day, I think the most popular games in the world will always be multiplayer, just because the ability to widen the audience by having your friends play with you, right? Even if they're not that into video games. Everyone played Among Us, right? Even people, you were saying at your work, people were like, let's play Among Us. And like, your company, from what I know, is just not very ahead with the technology, shall we say.
I mean, they didn't suggest let's play Among Us. I thought about it and then thought,
okay,
this is probably too much of a video game for them.
Okay,
So I didn't try it. But I probably should have. I should have.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Minecraft. I mean, even Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing, part of the reason that was so massive is because of the ability, as terrible as it is on Nintendo's side to get to other people's islands, but like that is a social game at its very core. So I think social games and like stuff that is multiplayer is, at the end of the day, going to be, look at Twitch. What are the things that people are watching? League of Legends, Valorant, right? Like Dota. That's it. That's the top of the charts every time, all the time, because that it's easy. It's easy for people to jump into. They're often free. So yeah,
totally.
It's the direction we're going. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, very good question, Tim. Good talking point. Definitely enjoyed that one. But that's all we've got time for emails. As I said at the top of the segment, we're running a little bit low. We do really appreciate you sending your emails, your comments, your questions. You can send them to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. Or leave a comment, a question in our Discord server. Link to that in the show notes. You can join the community over there. But yeah, that's all we've got time for the second segment. Join us after the break when we're going to be talking about some of the games coming to Nintendo Switch in 2022. We will be right back.
Do you ever feel you don't get out what you're putting in? All your hopes and efforts are all in vain. Who will pick you up when you've lost everything? Does it all become for granted with a wedding ring?
All right, everyone, welcome back to the third and finale part of today's show. It's time to look ahead, look to the future of video games and Nintendo and what's coming out this year, because there's a lot. There's potential for there to be a lot of bangers, a lot of fun things. Will they get delayed? Won't they? Who knows? But we have a list here of every release that we think is significant, or at least is meaningful in some way, to Nintendo, and we're going to go through it. We have a list of stuff with dates that goes up to around April time, and then we just have a smorgasbord of stuff that has no date, but probably is coming out this year because that's what people have said about the game, and it might do, it might not. Who knows? So there's some question marks up in the air. But Bally, to make this spicy, because we've got to make it a bit more interesting, you know. As always with this podcast, all of our ideas stolen from other places. So I'm going to shout out to Easy Allies, who often do a thing called it used to be called Pop Tarts and Toasted Strudels when Kyle Bossman hosted the show. They've changed it now, now that Brandon Jones is hosting. However, I thought that we'd have to do this ourselves, but give a TNL spin to it. And what spin better than Star Wars, of course? And our favorite Star Wars movie, Episode 2, a classic meme-worthy movie. I think probably between you and me, the most memes in Star Wars come from Episode 2. From I think everyone's favorite meme about Anakin in the sand, you know, that's a big one. But for us, you know, there are two very important ones, right? But these are the sort of ones when we were watching Episode 2 as a kid, we would just rewind and just rewatch over and over again.
Stuff that like had us falling on the floor laughing.
We're just laughing at ourselves because we just create these jokes out of nothing. That's not funny at all, really.
It's really not that funny.
No, not funny at all. but as
you
know, what, like 10-year-olds, this is what we did. Like, we just rewind it constantly and just like rewatch it again and again. I specifically remember with the second one that we just did that constantly. But so for a game that we think we're excited for, we're hyped for, we're positive about, we're going to say that's my bobber, referring to my favorite line in a movie as listed on my Wikitubia page, which is sacrosanct, as everyone knows. My favorite line in a movie is Boba Fett when he opens the door to Obi-Wan and Torn Wee going through the door. He says, "Yup."
Yep.
That's it. He's like, his shoulders, he just shrugs his shoulders and goes,
the
"Yup."
question to Boba is, Boba, is your father at home?
Is your father
And it just
home?
says, "Yup."
Yep.
And then she's like, "Can we see him?" And he's like, "Sure." That's it. I think those are the only lines that kid has in the movie. Also, shout out to the actor. I follow him on Twitter. The guy who plays Kid Boba Fett. He's fun.
To remember his name,
I got Daniel something. I think he's New Zealand from
Daniel
New Zealand.
Logan.
Daniel Logan. Yeah, I follow him on Twitter. He's excited obviously because there's a Boba Fett show happening, which he shows up in a little bit in flashbacks, which is fun. But yes. Anyway, that if you're excited for a game, you say that's my boba, and if you are, if you find a game that you're like, don't know about that, might not come out, not sure about it's going to be that good, I think it might flop a little bit, you say that's my Dooku. And this, of course, is referring to the line that Obi-Wan says to Dooku when he's trapped on Geonosis, and he says, Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
And for some reason, Bally, we found this the funniest fucking thing in the world. We rewind this constantly as Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
So anyway, that's a little peek into our history of us being idiots as kids loving Star Wars. And I've now built it into this stupid game where we're going to go through the release calendar for the year and do it. So, Bally, are you ready to go through?
I am feeling prepared.
Fantastic. All right, let's kick things off on January 13th, which in fact is a time of recording tomorrow, and it will be in the past when you hear this. But Astroneer is coming to Switch, which is exciting because I think this is a game that is really cool and I have wanted to get into for a while. We tried to do co-op through Xbox and PC, but it didn't end up working for us. But it is a kind of like exploration of planets, like crafty, almost Minecraft adjacent game, but with really cool destructibility where you kind of like warp the landscape and stuff like this. Are you interested in checking out Astroneer at some point later in the future, Bally?
Yeah, I'd like us to have another go at getting that co-op going. Maybe we won't buy it on Switch, but hopefully we could play it like Series X PC and just a bit of co-op exploring and building, and you love that kind of game, so give it a go.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. So that's coming out soon. Next up, we have a fabled video game that has been long in development. Dave Lang shouted it would never happen, and yet he was proven wrong. Windjammers 2 finally releases on January 20th. Windjammers is one of those like mythical games that I think it was like 2015 or something that Giant Bomb got deep into Windjammers. Maybe it was before that. It might have been like 2013 or something. They got deep into Windjammers. And Windjammers is this like forgotten game from the past that they just brought back because they found it and they're like, this is cool. And I think they're partially responsible for why Windjammers 2 exists in this weird universe. But yeah, you've seen Windjammers before, right, Bally? It's like this disc throwing game where you're kind of going back and forth. It's almost like air hockey, but with big people and defending a goal, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a cool idea. I've never actually played Windjammers before. I would like to play Windjammers at some point. And I believe this is going to have online multiplayer. So that's a cool thing.
Do you think it'll do well? Do you think is it going to be a solid game?
I don't know. It feels like the hype around Windjammers has it's not at its peak moment right
kind
now.
Of left about 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, probably a bit longer than that. I'd say like 8 years at this point. But yes. But I think that at the very least, Giant Bomb people will play Windjammers too, and that will give it a little bit of a bump. But yeah, I'm excited to see how that does and how good it is, because it seems just like a refinement of the original game, not changing too much, kind of sticking similarly to it. So yeah, excited to see how that does. On January 26th, we have Pokemon Legends Arceus. That's my Dooku.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
I'm going to call it out. That's my Dooku. I watched a trailer for this the other day, Bali, and I said to you on Skype, I was like, man, I watched that trailer and I was like, this looks like shit. It's just, I don't know, something about it, the visuals, the frame rate, it doesn't speak to the polish or the level of kind of competence that you want out of a Nintendo first-party project. Of course, people could be crying from the rooftop saying, well, look at Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes, that was the same thing. And yeah, I know, it's like the Pokemon series is having a rough time of it, I think, on the Switch, partially because they just are not used to working on console-level hardware. Like the Pokemon Company and all the games they have done well with in the past have been on handhelds, and I don't know, it just seems like they don't know what they're doing here.
To make an open world style game in 2022, it's got to have a big budget, a big team, a long development cycle, because you look at some of these really pretty games, like a game like Horizon Forbidden West coming out, and like, separate to the fact it's on PS5 and all these other boosting things it's got going for it, it's just like lots of work done on the environments and shading and shadows and so much stuff that makes the game feel that extra bit involved. And when you see a game like Pokemon Legends Arceus that has very little to none of that, you really notice how stark the world just feels, and it's very, that's just not what you kind of want from an open world game. So like, credit to them for trying something new. We've been saying that about Pokemon Company for a long time now. So I actually do genuinely hope it does well, like critically. Like I really hope they've got something going for it. But you're right, those trailers just look flat and weird, and not even visually, but like, as you say, the way it runs, the frame rate. And I'm intrigued what the gameplay's like. Is it really going to be that good? I'm just not convinced that they've got the chops to pull it out the bag. It's just not, it doesn't feel right.
That said, I will probably buy the game.
Are you going to buy it?
I'm kind of in a place where I'm just morbidly curious. I just kind of have to know, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe I will just wait for the reviews, and if they end up being bad, then I'll be like, maybe I just won't waste my money on this. But I just almost...
Also, it won't go down in price if you do want to pick it up down the line. It's going to take... It's not the kind of game that...
No, it won't.
Down, right?
It is the Pokemon Company, right? So it's just like retains its value, just like every Nintendo franchise does. But yeah, I'll see. I am still... Just because it's a big game for the Switch coming out, and I kind of want to like talk about it and like have an idea of what it is, even if it's bad, I kind of have to be there for it, because it is, to be honest, the most interested I've been in a Pokemon project since like I stopped playing the games, essentially. I picked up Sword and Shield and enjoyed it for what it was, but I just don't get much joy out of regular Pokemon anymore, because as I've said many times, I see the Matrix, right? Like when you play competitive Pokemon, it's like, yes, I am now Neo and I can just bend this to my very will, and none of it is a challenge whatsoever. Not to say that Pokemon's ever been a challenge, but even less so once that has happened. So that is my Dooku, Pokemon Legends Arceus. All right, that's January 26th. Next up, Life is Strange Remastered is coming out on February 1st, which is cool because so we both played Tell Me Why, which is one of these. It was made. I think Tell Me Why was actually made by Don't Nod, and Don't Nod made the original Life is Strange, but the series is kind of, there's two studios who work on it now. So we've got Deck 9 who did True Colors, but we've got Don't Nod who did Tell Me Why in the original Life is Strange.
People liked True Colors last year. Never got to it, but like sounds like it was a really a really good one of those.
Yeah, absolutely, and feels like standalone enough. You don't have to have played the previous ones in order to like get the most out of it. And Life is Strange as a series has been an anthology series, which means every season or whatever you want to call it, it follows a different set of characters. I just bought Life is Strange 2 in the Steam sale, and that follows a couple of brothers that's completely disconnected from the original game. I think there's some like probably crossover, some like references, but it's a totally different story, separate, standalone. And yeah, the original Life is Strange I think is really good. I never played it, but I watched a playthrough of it, so I know the story and I know what happens, and yeah, it's really well done, and I think it's definitely worth playing if you've not played that series before. Still holds up, I think, the first game, even if it has some questionable writing choices at times. I believe it's the game where the phrase fuck your selfie is a line. Go fuck your selfie. That's a line. Yes. So they say hella a lot as well in that game. So
Okay.
February 1st coming out on Switch for the first time, which is great. On February 8th we have Ollie Ollie World. This is a game I'm very excited for. Bali, how are you feeling about this skateboarding return?
You know, you were much hotter on the Ollie Ollie games. I think I only played the first one way back when it kind of came free to 3DS and Wii U through that strange Humble Bundle.
Yes.
We're talking about now in 2022 that there's a Humble Bundle on 3DS and Wii U. Yes, you heard it here
Nintendo
first.
will never do a Humble Bundle again. It just doesn't make any financial sense for them anymore. They
But God, it was great for just, fodder stuff to play, to talk about on the show. And at the time, I did like Ollie Ollie World. It was...
Well, the original Ollie Ollie, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, the original Ollie Ollie. And it was fine. It was level-based. I like the idea and the synergy of, like, working out the best way to tackle the level. And you're grinding and jumping and you're skateboarding in a 2D world through the level. But I love what they've done, what we've seen so far from Ollie Ollie World trailers, where it just looks and feels a lot more involved. Like, it doesn't feel like it's like this strict level system like there was before, and that's nice because they're taking the core idea of that game, which is the great feeling controls, and doing something very different with it, which is what I wanted, because I didn't think that game really suited level to level. It felt quite archaic in a way for what that game was going for. So this feels like a very natural evolution of kind of what they would have wanted, perhaps. And yeah, I think it looks great. I'm intrigued to see what reviews are. It's the kind of game that I want to see some decent reviews before jumping in, but if it gets decent reviews, I'd like to play it on Switch for sure.
Yeah, it does feel like an evolution in a cool way visually, but also gameplay wise. It feels like they're doing something different with it, maybe a bit more story driven, right? Because like as we mentioned, the previous games were very much do all the challenges in this level to get enough points so that you unlock the next one, which has never been my favorite form of progression. Everyone knows. I think both of us are very much against that form of progression, and I would like them to evolve that and not have that be the case anymore. So I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be a fun one. On March 4th we have no more project in the title, but the pure triangle strategy. That's my Boba, baby. That's my Boba Fett.
Yep.
I'm here for it. Triangle strategy. I am very excited for this game. I think the demo absolutely knocked my socks off. Obviously, I have a complicated history, let's say, with Octopath Traveler, a game that I thought the demo for which was also incredible. But
they're keeping this stuff you liked from Octopath Traveler, which is like the music and the art style,
Yes.
And then it's a completely different story and obviously a completely different battle system.
Yeah, and I think it kind of like is addressing some of the weaknesses, which was the narrative stuff for me in Octopath.
The narrative of that demo was really good.
Yes.
It was so severe and extreme, some of the stuff that happened in it, that I'm kind of like confused how they managed to bring it all together again and keep going with the story, if you know what I mean. Like, it's very... I'm interested, like, how many branching paths are there in this thing? Because a lot of shit goes down in that world.
There are a couple of different options you can do as well that do different maps. And to say how much I like this demo, I played both of those scenarios, right? I went back and did the different choice in order to see the rest of it. And I think I probably put 4 or 5 hours into this demo, which is more than I put into a lot of like regular games, to be honest with you. There's a lot of shorter indie games out there that I've spent less time with than I did with the demo for this. Obviously, like, that speaks to the genre it is and the type of big game it is. But I really liked the turn-based strategy of it. I found the challenge, like I relished it. I really enjoyed that map where you have like the cable cars like going up and down, and it's kind of on a mountain, there's fire. Like it was super challenging, but in a way that I really loved thinking my way through. And so even if the story falls apart and all that stuff, from a strategy level alone, I am very excited for Triangle Strategy. So really looking forward to that. March 4th, probably going to be the first big game of the year that I'm very into. So coming up next, though, we have Chocobo GP on March 10th. This is a racing game that stars everyone's favorite Final Fantasy character, the Chocobo, and a bunch of Final Fantasy characters in there. There was an original game that came out on PlayStation, I believe, back in the day, and this is kind of a new one. So it's interesting, it's fun. Obviously, I've tried to get another Mario Kart style game on Switch, which is Crash Team Racing, that I ended up not really liking, and the game didn't run very well on Switch. It didn't really hit the buttons for me. So Chocobo GP looks cool. Will I get it? Probably not, but I'm interested. I'm curious at least. Bally, how does your kind of kart racing brain feel about Chocobo GP?
I'm curious. I do, from the few Final Fantasies I've played, I do like those worlds. I think the Chocobo are cute. I think if this game got some decent reviews and I was in the mood for a bit of a kart racer, sure, I'll go for it. I think it'll end up being very middling to not great reviews, and I think it'll be very expensive probably for what it is. And
yeah,
that will probably end up putting me off it to the point. But I'm always up for a kart racer. Obviously, we're awaiting something Mario Kart related, who knows, but I'm always up for a kart racer in between. I never jumped on Crash Team Racing like you did, and I'd be up for trying something if it's decent. But I'll keep an eye on reviews, but I'm not confident for sure.
Yeah. Coming up on March 17th, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. They are putting a Persona 4 game on Switch, not the one that everyone wants.
How long are Nintendo going to be playing this game with Persona on the Switch? Is it just going to keep going?
It never ends,
It's just going to put side games on the console, but no actual Persona game.
The only Persona games that ever happen outside of Sony consoles are the spin-offs, and this game is a fighting game back from the PS3 era. Seems pretty cool, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who are into it, but I put it on here just because I'm like, someone put Persona 4 Golden on Switch, please, for the love of God. On March 22nd, Rune Factory 5 comes out. Big release for a lot of people, I think. Rune Factory, kind of like the cousin of Harvest Moon in a way, a series that is very much about doing your kind of like farming and being in a town and stuff, but also a bigger focus on combat and dungeon exploration and that type of thing.
I remember I think it was Shaq when we were at school, and he had like the original Rune Factory on PSP, and I was like, this thing looks incredible. And that game, I believe, had like a very futuristic farm setting, which I found...
Yeah, it kind of like blends technology with...
Yeah, I was like, this looks amazing. And he had like this big technological tractor that I was like so jelly of.
Yeah.
Playing my like Harvest Moon DS at the time. And I was like,
yeah.
Yeah. I've never got into Rune Factory, but I'm interested in kind of where that series goes, and like I'm interested to see what reviews are.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. It's a series I've always wanted to get into, and hopefully 5 is a good jumping in point. Kind of like what SMT 5 was last year for a lot of people, for Shin Megami Tensei. Maybe Rune Factory 5 will be a good jumping in point for people new to the series. So yeah, looking forward to that one. On March 25th, a hot release date that we just got, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's finally coming out.
That's my boba.
Yep.
All right, here we go.
I'm just taken by like some of these recent trailers, and we got that release date today announced, March 25th. I'm actually really excited about a Kirby game, and that's kind of why I think that it deserves a boba. It's like it just looks good. It just looks like, sure, there's nothing in those trailers that makes you go, oh my god, that is such an interesting mechanic, in the same way that, say, a Mario Odyssey trailer did back in 2017, but it's Kirby, and it looks interesting, and it's a 3D world, and that game just looks really chill and charming, and you can explore these cool worlds, and I'm totally up for that. Come, what date is it? March 25th. I'm up for that.
Yeah, I do think that the recent trailer showed off a lot more kind of environments and power-ups and all those types of things. It doesn't seem like it's really straying from the traditional Kirby formula, which is suck up people, get some abilities, use them on other enemies, and probably use them for other elements as well, like exploration and stuff like that. But it does seem like it is still using a overworld map where you go from level to level. It doesn't seem like it's a contiguous kind of land that you're exploring in an open sense.
Yeah, just some of those levels seem quite big, and like sometimes the camera would like pan back and it's like Kirby running through like this massive valley, and it just kind of looked really, really great.
Yeah, it was great. Really looking forward to it, and I think Kirby in the Forgotten Land will hopefully be the Kirby game that kind of breaks through a little bit and gets more people to pay attention, because I think, as fun as those 2D ones have been, I think everyone's kind of sick of them at this point and wants something a little bit fresh, and it feels like that's what this is giving us. So yeah, coming out very soon. Then Bally, finally, is going to be released, and I think this is a leaked release date. I'm not sure if they've confirmed this or not, but Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp supposedly coming April 8th, I think, according
That's
to
my boba.
Yep,
wow, back to back
boba.
Holy shit.
yep.
Really
believe
popping
it.
off here. Yeah, tell me about Advance Wars coming back, Bally. How you feeling?
I can't defend the fact this is just a remake of two very good games that I've played before, and I enjoyed both of them very much. But I'm very excited to just have some Advance Wars on my Switch and just chip away at these games and just that nice like pick up and play a bit of Advance Wars strategy. It's just a very comfortable place for me. I just really love it. And obviously we had Wargroove back in 2019, and it's been a long time since Advance Wars, and I want to back this game with all my heart, and I'm going to be tweeting about it. I'm going to be doing promotion for them. Like I'm here. I'm their sales rep. Like I'm trying. I need that brand new Advance Wars experience on Switch, and this is the stepping stone to getting there. So yeah, if you haven't heard about this game, you got to try it. You got to buy it. You got to get it day one, and you got to tell Nintendo we want more Advance Wars. Thank you, way forward, and this game is going to be great.
Yeah, I hope it does well. Not that I'm going to buy it, because I probably won't, just because I enjoyed that first Advance Wars well enough. Really kicked me in the balls in terms of its difficulty. I just found it extremely hard. And Advance Wars is a series that I get it. I think it's fantastically made. I'm just not. My brain is. I went. There's two routes you can go as a child: Fire Emblem or Advance Wars. And once your brain is locked into one of them, you can't go the other way. It's so impossibly hard.
Apparently, Nintendo's brain got locked into one of them for like the last 15 years. So
yeah.
Hopefully, it'll
shake him loose.
itself
Shake
a
him
bit.
loose. Coming on April 12th, a port that I think is long awaited for a lot of people, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim. If I had an extra bobber, I actually do have one, but I'm not going to use it on a port. But if I had a third one, I might give it to this game just so people out there could know the glory of 13 Sentinels. This is a kind of stylish visual novel / tactical game from Vanillaware, who make
2020, right?
Yeah, I want to say 2020. They make just gorgeous video games, and this one is no exception. It's absolutely stunning to look at, but has a really complicated and layered sci-fi story that is just mind-blowing in a lot of ways, and also has like tactic stuff that I really enjoyed. I think a lot of people kind of brush that stuff to the side, and you certainly can do. You don't have to engage with it that much. You kind of just have to get through it if you want to, but I really enjoyed the process of playing those battles, and it was a fun kind of addition to the rest of the experience, which mainly is just going through a story and making choices and kind of figuring out what the hell is going on. A pretty wild thing that I think is just really well done, especially considering you can kind of choose the order in which you go through it all. You have these, I believe, 11 characters that you see the backstory of, and you can go in any order and all of it will make sense because you'll come to revelations at different points in time depending on where you are and who you're playing as. So shout out to 13 Sentinels. And that brings us to the end of everything with release dates. From this point onwards, everything has no release date, so it could come out, it could not. Who knows? So we'll see. But let's kick it off with Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, a cool game that is calling back to Jet Set Radio that I am not very familiar with, but I think has a nice style to it, and is cool. Like, it's almost blending kind of Tony Hawk skating, but like grinding on rails, as well as the kind of artsy stuff of like tagging walls, and it's very much got that vibe to it, which I think it's doing a good job of being a spiritual successor, and I'm curious to see if the team can pull it off and make it a game that people are actually in love with. So an interesting one there. We have Card Shark, which is a really cool kind of like card-based game. There's lots of those at this point in time, but I believe you play as a shark, or there's a shark involved somehow. It's very neat. It's been in a couple of Nintendo Directs, and looking forward to see how that does. Dark Deity, a game that I have been interested in because it came out on Steam last year, and is basically just what if Fire Emblem games made Fire Emblem fans made a game that they put out and were like, hey, this is just basically Fire Emblem, but it's not really, because we just made up this new world, and it looks cool. I think the sprite work and the animation is what's interesting to me about it. I think the maps straight up look bad, if I'm honest. I don't think they look very good, but it is coming to Switch, and hopefully that version runs well and is nice, because I think that's probably the place I would prefer to play that game. But if you're a Fire Emblem fan and you've not heard of this, definitely pay attention, because I think it's doing some neat stuff. Then we have Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. And Bally, I have to say, that's my Dooku.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
That's thematically with Lego Star Wars. That's my Dooku, and I'll tell you for why. I'll tell you for why, my friend. This game has been through development hell. It has taken so long. Like the Star Wars sequels are so in the rearview mirror that no one cares anymore. You know,
everyone wants to move past the Skywalker Saga when the game is called the Skywalker Saga.
Exactly. And you know, look, Lego games, they've been fine. They've been good for a while. I enjoyed that Lego Lord of the Rings game, but I feel like there's diminishing returns. You know, especially when there's Lego Star Wars games that have already existed. The very first one on GameCube that I remember going over to your house and playing a ton of, and we loved that, and that was fantastic. But I think it's just long in the tooth now. Lego Star Wars, it's been around too long. It's just not great anymore. And as much as they want to like pretty this up and make it like modern, change everything about, I think it's just going to be the same. It's going to be bog standard Lego game that you're not going to get much interesting out of, and it's going to be pretty similar. Yeah,
I think it's actually going to be a step up. And from the trailers we have seen, I know those trailers were a very long time ago at this point, but it genuinely looked like they were really changing like some of the gameplay and just visually making it look pretty stellar. And I'm hopeful that the fact it is taking so long, it hints towards the fact it won't just be Lego Star Wars standard Lego game that they kind of churn out year on year on year. But it felt like they did that for a very long time. So the fact that it has been delayed so much gives me a bit more hope that they're trying to do something a bit more different, hopefully a bit stronger. And I mean, those games still do well fairly critically, and I think this will be arguably the best of the bunch. So I'm hoping it'll still come out. It'll be mid to high 80s and still make some waves, hopefully. I can't say it's going to come out this year, but I think when it does come out, I do think it'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah, I think maybe it's taken a long time just because they have 9 movies to make this time.
That's also a big issue, I bet.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And I'm sure they want to like put some Rogue One stuff in there, you know, like they might be beefing that thing up. But anyway, that's my Dooku, Lego Star Wars. Metal Slug Tactics. Now this one looks pretty cool. It's taking the old Metal Slug franchise and doing a tactics game out of it. Beautiful pixel art. Very, very interested to see how this does. Obviously, as a fan of that style of game, I'm curious about it to see how it does. But interested to see Metal Slug Tactics. Omori is our next one. Sorry, did you have something to say about that?
I thought Metal Slug Tactics looks cool. I don't have much more.
Okay, great. Thank you for your contribution, Valley. Omori, which obviously was the one more thing in the last Indie Direct or Indie World Showcase that I have been curious about for a while, as I mentioned, has kind of Undertale vibes and energy, a kind of well-told narrative that is psychological and thrilling and wild, and I would like to go on that adventure, so I'm looking forward to it when it comes out to Switch. Probably would be the place I would want to play it, but yeah, I'm very curious about Omori.
Interested to see what a lot of kind of Switch reviewers say about it and how it does. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I don't think I'm day one.
I think just this will hit the mainstream a lot more at this point, because I think a lot of people haven't covered it up to this point because it was just only on PC and didn't really break out of that sphere. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of opinions on Omori. Oxenfree 2. Sequel to Oxenfree. What do you think about Oxenfree, Bal? It's been a while now since we played it. I liked it okay. I thought it was an alright narrative game.
It's pretty good. It's like one of the only games at the time that I had played that kind of had actual voice acting that wasn't just like big AAA games, which felt quite weird at the time. But now there's a bunch of indies that have plenty of voice acting, so it doesn't feel quite as special as it arguably did. And I'll play Oxenfree 2. I'm not overly excited. I think it'll do fairly well. I think Oxenfree was pretty good, but it's not top tier for me. It's decent. It's a solid B game.
Yeah, it's a good, like, it has some interesting ideas around like responding to conversations and like the way they would flow conversations and stuff like that. But yeah, it didn't hit me as hard as I think it hit a lot of people. Bali, you've made some late additions to the list.
I just stuck these in. I just remembered them.
Yeah,
we've got to talk about these.
We have Locomotive from Chucklefish, which is going to be a kind of point-and-click adventure set on a train with some wacky murdering hijinks going on. Bali, you seem quite interested in this one. You've drafted it for your fantasy team, no less.
Yeah. I'm just trusting Chucklefish. It's not a genre I've really tried or played, but I'm intrigued by this idea that it's all taking place on like this one train, and I'm interested. It might not be great. I want to see what reviews say, but who knows?
Yeah. And then we have one which I probably should have saved one of my bobbers for, but it is Sea of Stars.
God, it looks good.
Gorgeous RPG coming from the folks who made The Messenger, that's Sabotage Studio. And yeah, I've been excited about this one for a long time, and obviously it recently got announced for Switch, and it's supposed to come out at the end of this year. Skeptical that it will. I think that probably gets pushed. But yeah, The Messenger was great, and I think Sea of Stars just has all the makings of a modern classic, just as long as it sticks the landing. Because visually, holy shit, is it stunning. It is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, what are your feelings on this one, Bali?
It just looks fantastic. It's kind of evoking a lot of classic JRPGs, but it still looks very modern. And I've not played The Messenger. I like the idea that these worlds link. Apparently it's a prequel to The Messenger, which is just kind of zany and interesting. And yeah, I'm skeptical it'll make it this year, but it does just look so good. And it's got those Chrono Trigger style battles within the environment. Like there's no black screen that takes you to
very
another
seamless
battle.
transition, essentially.
Seamless transition, which is really nice, especially coming off of games like Final Fantasy VII Remake that also did something like that. So it's nice. I like that stuff. And I really pray it can do a good story and a good battle system. And hopefully it can do that. We'll see.
Yeah. Next up, we have River City Girls 2, the sequel to River City Girls, which is a kind of spiritual successor to River City Ransom, classic side-scrolling beat-em-up game. I played some of the first River City Girls. I thought it was okay. I don't love side-scrolling beat-em-ups. The only one that's really connected with me has been Streets of Rage 4, which I just think is excellent. But yeah, I think it was decent, and people seem to enjoy it, so it's done well enough to get a sequel, so that's good. And I'm sure Guillaume on RFN will probably be playing it because he just loves side-scrolling beat-em-ups. She Dreams Elsewhere. So this is a game that's been kicking around for a while now. It is a kind of Undertale-esque, like very surrealist RPG, similar to Omori in a sense, but like even more kind of bizarre and out there. And it's one that has been very highly lauded in terms of like people who have seen it and previewed it. So I wonder if it's going to come out this year and if it is going to pop people's socks off. But that sounds like a pretty cool game that I think a lot of people in the kind of critical media sphere will be talking about during this year at some point. So we'll see if that happens. We then have 2 Point Campus, probably Caroline's game of the year for 2022, I imagine.
I don't think she's overly aware of this game right now, but I think she will very much like this game. She absolutely loved 2 Point Hospital on Switch, even though it like crashed the system what felt like every 3 hours or something ridiculous. She's like, I don't care. I think it had a decent save system in its defense, but it didn't run well at all, but she still had a blast playing that on Switch. So I'm skeptical this will run well on Switch, but I think 2 Point Hospital was apparently really cool. So I'm interested to see what they can do with like a university kind of setting.
Yes, that would be her bobber for sure.
Her bobber for sure.
Yep.
Now, Bally, we have a significant game that everyone believes will happen at some point, but who knows when. It's Hollow Knight Silksong, baby. A game that Nintendo played at their treehouse in 2019, no less. There's footage on the internet of this game. Back when it was, I think, just transitioning from being DLC into a full release, they had like a full area like made and combat and all this stuff. Like,
was it officially DLC? Going to be DLC at one point?
Originally it was, yeah. Okay. Silksong originally was going to be DLC, just where you played as Hornet and you're exploring the same spaces. They were maybe going to add a couple of areas or something to the overworld map. But like Hollow Knight was a game that got a lot of post-release DLC and like extra stuff. So they had just been doing a lot of that stuff, and then they were like, okay, we're going to do one final big expansion to it, and it's going to be Silksong. And then I guess they just made so much that they're like, oh, actually, this is another game. And that has just kept happening for the last 3 or 4 years. So still missing in action. It was on the cover of Edge, of course, back at the end of 2020. And everyone thought, oh, well, clearly this means it's coming out next year. And still silence. Nothing's happening. Bally, do you believe in Hollow Knight Silksong for this year?
I've been so burned on this last year with my Fantasy Critic. If in doubt, it will be delayed, and like that's just kind of become my mantra a bit. And I think that the fact that we don't have a release date or there's like previews or anything, it just feels like I'd be surprised if this came out this year. Genuinely, like I know it's been such a long time, but if I had to put money on it, I'd say spring 2023.
Yeah. Give those guys time, right? Like,
I mean, it's going to be fantastic. So you know, it's going to just. It will redefine video games, as everyone knows. I've said it before, but like the movement that we've seen so far of that game, and the world design of Hollow Knight, this honestly has a shot of like becoming the GOAT of Metroidvanias. It really does. Totally.
So we'll see if it's able to do that.
Like we love our Metroidvanias, but there are so many people who rate Hollow Knight as just like this revolutionary. It did to Metroidvanias what Breath of the Wild did to open world games, like that level and beyond, arguably, and for many people, and we both liked it a lot, and it didn't. There were aspects of that game that I just didn't vibe with the best, and it's just very brutal. But I don't know. My personal gripes were just like because I played like the pseudo Ultimate Edition that was on Switch or whatever, and it's kind of like, this final boss leads to this other final boss, and you go to the secret ending, and I never went in for all of that, so I got a very basic ending, and that always leaves me just a bit empty. I left feeling a bit empty, but I know many people love the game for all that extra stuff.
I'm kind of used to it at the point because lots of Castlevanias do that, and I generally just get a not a great ending in Castlevania game, and I'm like, okay, moving on, just because I don't really care about it that much, so it didn't affect me greatly. But there's a lot to dig into if you want to with Hollow Knight. My prediction is that everyone will think it's not as good as the original, and you and I will think it's way better than the original. That's my prediction for Hollow Knight.
I like that. Yeah.
All right, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Up, as they kept saying in their presentation at E3. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Up is coming out. You're playing this game at the moment, as we kind of talked about in the first segment, and I'm excited for the sequel. Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
It sounds like, it's a really strong formula already, and if they tweak that, if they add something interesting, like they've got a really strong base to build from. So this could be a very, very good game. I feel like people aren't talking about this game quite as much as they probably should be. I think this could very well be not in and around Game of the Year discussions, but I think certainly from a Nintendo perspective, it's up there.
Now, here's a question, Bally. Will Waluigi make an appearance? Will Waluigi enter the sphere? And will we, in fact, be great with the presence of Rabid Waluigi? Now, this is the important thing that I need to know.
That's pretty wild. I like that idea. Yeah. Have we had Rabid Wario yet?
I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe that. I can't even remember.
Spoilers for Mario plus Rabbids 1.
Maybe they were in the first game. I can't remember actually. So maybe you'll come across them, Bally. Who could say? We do know that we're getting Rosalina, and Rosalina Rabbid already seems like she has 2022 energy, which is fucking done with everything.
I'm excited to bring in all that Mario Galaxy energy to that world. I think that's a nice addition, to be honest. I know we're going backwards a bit, but I like that.
Yeah, they're going to alien planets, they're flying about, hopping to different places, so looking forward to some variety in locales in that game. Then, Bally, we have a game that some people are excited for, I guess. It's Sonic Frontiers.
That's my Dooku.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
On cue, as I expected. One of us had to take it, of course. It's the Sonic cycle, man. Sonic fans are crazy. They're like, look, believe me, it's gonna be a good one. And I'm like, Sonic Boom, Sonic, what was the most recent one?
Sonic Mania.
Sonic Mania was good, all right?
Because
Sonic
they
Mania,
threw it at a team who knew what they were doing. Even if you threw 3D Sonic at a team who knew what they were doing, you'd probably have a better result. And for some reason, that just never happens, and it's very tragic because I think Sonic's a fun character. He's got all that history. But Turns out actually good video game developers make good games, so don't
That's
give it
savage.
to bad developers, you know? Like, sorry to be savage over here, but, you know, if you want a good game, there's plenty of good development studios out there. Sega have the money, they can do it if they want to, but they choose not to, and that's on them.
Yeah, it's a tragic state of affairs, and look, I get it. The Sonic fan base very excited for Sonic Frontiers. They're like, it's Breath of the Wild for Sonic. This is his moment, and like this
Are we
game
going to
has
be eating our words? Is this going to be actually really good?
absolutely not. If you want a bona fide guaranteed prediction for 2022, Sonic Frontiers will be shit. That is a guaranteed prediction.
I tell you who I think could do a Sonic game better than anyone else.
Okay.
Would be Insomniac Games.
Oh,
And
hell yeah.
I know it's not possible, but I actually thought those open areas, there's one world in particular that's very open in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and you've got these boots that you're like racing
Jetting
around the world
yeah.
in. I'm like, this is how open world Sonic should look and feel. Like this is actually fun, and the way that Ratchet controls in that area, and I thought that would be really cool. But will this game be like that? Probably not. So there we go.
Sonic Frontiers wishes it has Breath of the Wild energy. In fact, it has Pokemon Legends Arceus energy. That's the truth. So.
We've not even seen gameplay. We've literally just seen Sonic on a hill in the Breath of the Wild stance. So there you go.
Yeah, we'll see. Next, Bali, a mythical game, one that we finally saw last year. Bayonetta 3, that's my bobber.
Yep.
I'm here for it. Bayonetta 3 is going to be, I hope, very good. A lot of worries about its development cycle and all that stuff, and creative directors leaving and this type of thing. However, they've showed it off. It looks fantastic. And yeah, sure, the Switch has issues with some of the frame rate. I get it. It's buckling under the pure, unadulterated brilliance that is Bayonetta. And I am very excited to play this game. It looks spectacular, and I think that coming off a game like Bayonetta 2 that was just absolutely raved about, it's a lot of pressure to follow up, but I think they can do it. I think they can pull it off, and I want it to come out and be good. So Bayonetta 3 is my bobber.
Are you going to play that game and be like, ugh, video games have moved on recently and this game is not running quite as nicely as I would have hoped?
Yeah, probably a little bit, but I think I can get past that, you know? I
for
feel
the first
like
few seconds,
I
you're
feel like
right,
a lot of
it kinda
people
fades
will
in.
like that with No More Heroes 3, but I think most of that is like in the open world sections of that game, and the actual combat like runs really smoothly at 60, and it seems like from the trailer that's what they're doing, is like, okay, some of the stuff where it's not actually as refined and important isn't as good because it's not as important for gameplay purposes, but when you're actually fighting, like, that seemed very silky smooth to me. It seemed like it was running at 60, so and I imagine it will be, because it kind of has to. That franchise is built on, and a lot of character action games are built on the ability to be smooth and know all the moves and dodge out the way. It's kind of like fighting games, right? It's like just making sure that you understand it. So yeah, very excited for Bayonetta 3, and it will come in 2022, guaranteed. I'm putting my stamp on it. Take it to the bank.
But it's not got a quarter yet. It's just
I'm gonna say like end of Q3, like October or something like that, probably.
Okay.
Splatoon 3 is the next one on the list. I'm excited for this. I think it's been a while since we've jumped in and played some Splatoon consistently, so I feel fresh again, you know? I feel like I'm ready for a bit more of it, and
I feel fresh as well. My concern is, could we have just as good of a time if we both just jumped into Splatoon 2 and played online for a good few hours for a few days in a row, and then come away from that experience feeling roughly as hot as we would when Splatoon 3 comes out? That's my concern. Like, is it going to mix up the gameplay to a point where we're like, I'm so glad I bought Splatoon 3 and didn't just jump back into Splatoon 2?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think that it is definitely going to be a bit more iterative as Nintendo sequels go. That said, I think there's some cool stuff that they've shown so far in terms of the new weapons they have, and I hope the single player kind of lives up to a potential that a single player Splatoon game could reach, which I never think they have yet. I don't think they've really made good on the promise of what a single player Splatoon game could be, and I do wonder if they have fixed some of my issues. Unlikely. I think they will probably end up just having the same live system, and I'll be annoyed once again, because that's just Nintendo and they just go back to their old favorite things and without re-examining them sometimes, and Yeah, but I have hope, and I think this is going to be a good, fun online summer game. Probably comes out in about July or something, and yeah, people will be excited for it. And maybe they'll have some new modes. Obviously, they added Salmon Run last time for Splatoon 2. I'm sure there'll be some new modes that they add into this and try and switch things up a little bit. So, yeah, Splatoon 3. It'll be good. It's coming out. I guarantee that. Of all the big Nintendo games to come out this year, I think that one is the most guaranteed to actually come out.
Have all the ones without a release date.
Yes.
Okay.
Then Bally, of course, we have the big one. The one that might happen, it might not. But if it does, it'll be the greatest year of all time. Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild 2. A game still that doesn't have a proper subtitle.
That's my Dooku.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
Oh no! Oh no!
Okay, hear me out on this one.
Okay, all right.
Zelda fans, including us, are so naive. We are we have been burned so many times, but for some goddamn reason, we actually believe what Nintendo tells us when they just lie straight to our face. This is a series we're talking about here, where multiple times they have changed the system that the game was going to come out on because the development cycle was so long. But for some reason, when Nintendo go, oh yeah, but no, believe us, this time it's going to come out in 2022. Nintendo fans go, hey, okay, can't wait. Breath of the Wild 2 going to be Game of the Year 2022. No, it's not. It's not coming this year. It's just not going to happen. And that is why it's my Dooku.
So, yeah, nothing to do with the quality of how good Breath of the Wild 2 will be. Yeah.
Nothing to do with quality of Breath of the Wild 2, but I just hate being manipulated and abused by Nintendo, and I'm sick of it.
Fair enough, man. I get it. They gaslight us all the time, and I think that I probably agree broadly. I think it's not going to come out this year, but there's I'm going to give it a 10% chance, right? There's an outside 10% chance that it does.
Even Nintendo said we're working for 2022. There's language similar to that, and it's they've said much more certain stuff than that in the past, and it still doesn't come out. So if they're even giving themselves a window, throw in COVID on top of all of that, it just doesn't feel like it's happening. I agree, 10% is probably a good shout. I think that's a good percentage. You're right. But I just hate it. I hate the cycle. I don't mind waiting for games, but I wish you were just honest about it, Just tell us. It's going to be 2024. Be honest.
It's like Atlas with Persona 5. They gave us 4 different years of release dates for Persona 5. It was just absurd, just ridiculous. So, anything else to say about Breath of the Wild 2? It's probably going to be fucking fantastic. That's all I know.
Even if it doesn't come out this year, I look forward to seeing more of that game and just getting a better understanding of how it's different, how it's the same. And God, that last trailer that we saw, was it the E3 2021? That was great stuff. So more of that, please.
When we do this again in 2023, Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be your bother. That's it. It's the turnaround,
Definitely.
It's going to happen. Because it's going to come out.
He's going to turn from the dark side. Is Boba Fett a good character?
Skeptical. It's kind of like grey, I would say. Anyway. Mario Kart 9 question mark is what's written here, because there's been a lot of spicy rumours going around the Twitter sphere at the moment of another Mario Kart happening, which, we've fucking talked about it so much on this show, but it could happen, it couldn't. I hope there's a new one so that I have an excuse to buy a Mario Kart for the first time in almost a decade. I'm going to say 8 years. Yes. When was the Mario Kart 8 come out? In 2014?
It was 2013, I think. Yeah.
2014 maybe, but yeah, around that time.
2014, yeah.
It's been a rough time.
I think it's money on the table for Nintendo. I think they might have finally worked that one out, perhaps. I don't know.
They just did some calculations if we put out another Mario Kart, this line will just go up. We'll just make cash.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where even if it sells a third of the number of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch, that's still a damn good game that's going to end up in the top 10 games on Switch kind of level of sales.
Of course, yeah.
They're at that point now where we are maybe in the final half, not maybe the final third, but at least the final half of the Switch's life cycle at the very least. And they got to get one out on this system before they move to Switch 2 or whatever it becomes. And sure, that system might then have Mario Kart 9 Deluxe, but so be it. We still need that Mario Kart 9 here on Switch. So I'm confident it gets announced this year. I'd be very, very surprised if it actually came out this year. And I think Nintendo, they like to put their big multiplayer games out in like the spring, summer. So that's where I'd slot it for next year if Splatoon's this year.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good, and I hope it happens. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do us for this segment. That's all the video games we've gone through. Don't know if there's anything else. If we missed something, let us know. But I feel like we covered what mattered to us at the very least. And I think it's shaping up to be a pretty cool year, you know? Like, already we have some big hitters with, you know, Triangle Strategy and Kirby, as well as Pokemon coming out. So at least there's some fun stuff to talk about at the start of the year. And I'm going to guess Nintendo will announce a few things relatively soon. Maybe Xenoblade 3, who could say? Who could say?
There was a lot last year that they announced within the year that came out in the year, like Pokemon Snap and Metroid and Wario.
Yeah, Nintendo are the company that is most likely to do that usually. They always... There's a lot of companies will announce games during a year, but oftentimes they will come out much later, whereas Nintendo are like, okay, it's going to come in like 2 months' time and you never knew about it before.
Yeah.
They like those short cycles.
Barring the big top tier AAAs like,
of course,
you know, Zeldas and Marios, but...
Or, you know, Metroid Prime 4, where they're like, here's the fucking logo, we haven't even decided the team yet. And that continues to happen. Yes, conspicuously absent from this list, Metroid Prime 4, because, like, yeah, that's still a joke. That's not happening this year. You're deluded if you think it is.
Maybe mention there's Metroid Prime remake is rumored.
Yeah, that's true. That's
that
another
could
rumor.
be cool. I can see that coming. Who knows? Or they might just finally put out that trilogy, but we'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. Cool. Well, that's going to close things out for the show, but we have a little bit of business to get to before we pop on out of here, Bally. It's time for the coveted game trade. A now time-honored tradition that we've done twice now, where I give Bally a game that he has to play and finish, and he gives me one that I have to play and finish.
So far, it's been games that one of us has played and the other hasn't. But
yes, yeah.
And
there's no rule. There's no hard rule on it, but I think it's a nice...
There's no rule. I'm sticking to that this time, but I'm certainly running low on that pile of games. For sure.
But yeah, it's basically... we have the whole year to play it, so there's no rush to. In the past, we've done it relatively quickly, but you know, there's no kind of like pressure to do so. So the only pressure is finish it by the end of the year. That's it. So as long as you do that, you can be you know, forgiven. So Bally, do you want to start things off? Do you want to tell me what game you're going to give me to play for 2022?
I mean, many people are talking about this as their game of the year already. I'm going to give you Wordle.
That's
no, I'm
I was gonna say, you motherfucker, that's not allowed. That's not on Switch yet. Even if they put Wordle on Switch, I would ban it. God damn
so
it.
I will say, if Metroid Prime hadn't been rumored with this remake, I probably would have given you that. But I'm gonna hold off on giving you that just in case it comes out, because I think that might be fun for both of us to play through.
I'll just look. If Metroid Prime remake happens, I will buy it and play it. Guaranteed.
Cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So the game I'm going to give you, this came out back in 2016, but came to Switch in 2017. You claim that you've played a lot of Metroidvanias. Would you believe that this is a Metroidvania I've played and you've not played, and it got an 88 on OpenCritic?
Ooh.
And you really need to give it a go. It's very short, it's very sweet, and that is Owlboy.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's a very, very good game. I don't think it does anything particularly special. I think it's very story driven. I think the characters and the sprite design is top tier, and it kind of gave me big Wind Waker vibes when I played it. So
yeah,
I mean, it's not really platforming; it's more flying around. So that's a bit of a change. But I'm interested to see what you think.
Owlboy is one of those games that never goes on sale for enough percentage off. It's like the eternal game that they just refuse to reduce it to an amount that I'm like, okay, now I'll buy it. But, you know, it's pretty old at this point, so I think that they're getting there. And I have wanted to play it for a long time. I think I was maybe a little bit turned off by some of the review stuff when it came out. Obviously, it clearly did very well, so I don't know why that was, but I think certain elements of it, I was like, I don't know if this is going to vibe with me as hard as I wanted it to. It has stunning pixel art. Like, it's one of the best-looking pixel art games I think I've seen. So, yeah, I do want to check this out and play it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to giving it a go, and obviously I've not bought it anywhere yet, so I probably will get the Switch version because that seems like its natural home. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to checking out Owlboy and seeing how it holds up. It's interesting to kind of like revisit relatively recent indie games that aren't actually that recent, right? Like it feels like it's been out quite a while at this point. So yeah, not many people going back and talking about it. It never comes up in discussions ever of like, what is the best Metroidvania you should play that you haven't played yet?
Yeah, it really isn't. I wonder if the fact that you're flying for most of the time, you're not actually platforming, ever counts against it in that way. But I don't know. It's very short and it's very story driven. Like mechanically, from a video game perspective, I don't think it's doing anything genuinely unusual. But maybe that's what holds it back a bit. But I think story wise, from in a kind of Ori kind of way, like I think it's very strong. I think it's good.
Yeah,
it's a good game
for sure. Okay, so Bally, I'm going to give you something as homework almost to prepare. It's in a similar way to what you're doing right now with Mario plus Rabbids getting ready for a new game. I'm going to give you the same thing, the same task, something that you probably never of your own volition would go ahead and play.
Oh, I think I might know what it is now.
I'm going to give you Bayonetta 2.
Okay,
so it's time, baby. Strap on in, get that Switch ready, and play one of the greatest character action games of all time. It's a good place to start at the top. You've never really got into the genre. You might as well play the best one as your first one. So
that is fair.
So there you go. Bayonetta 2,
nice,
spicy. Yeah, it's on Switch, and the first game is also on Switch, which I still haven't played, and I would like to play that version because it's got a bunch of stupid Nintendo stuff in it. Obviously, the Nintendo, it's only ever been on Nintendo systems, the second game, so it has a bunch of tie-in stuff like a Star Fox costume and some like chain chomps are weapons that you can get and things like that. But yeah, I know that you have been averse to this genre in the past and haven't really. You played the demo for Bayonetta 2 and you were like, I don't think it's for me. But I do think that this game, I don't know, it just has some of the most ridiculous spectacle I've ever seen, and I think that there's something about it that you could appreciate. So
did you play on normal?
No, I think I played on easy. First time through.
Can I change the difficulty down mid-game?
Yeah, you can switch whenever, I believe. Like
I might try normal, and if it gets a bit tricky, I'll toggle it down.
I think I want to go back and play it on normal because I have since then I've played a bunch of those on normal, like Astral Chain I played on normal. Okay. Had a bit of trouble at the end, but like it was for the most part well balanced. Devil May Cry 5 I think as well. Actually, I played that on easy, so maybe I have played most of these on easy. There's no shame in playing them on easy because it's almost akin to a fighting game sometimes, and like getting those combos and understanding them, and but I think it's very accessible, and you can like. When I played Bayonetta 2, it almost felt like playing Smash Brothers to some degree, because like the dodging out the way and the sliding away and stuff like that felt very reminiscent of.
It's easy enough to learn those combos, or did you learn them in menus a bit, or had?
Yeah, like basically, there's usually like a kind of loading area that lets you practice stuff, so you can just like mash them out and just kind of learn a couple. Like there's a lot in there, and a lot of it you'll probably end up mashing buttons for, but like. Bayonetta 2 and a lot of these character action games make mashing buttons feel better than any other game does. So there's a real kind of like fun to it that I think you can get out of the experience. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what you think of Bayonetta 2 eventually this year. So there you go. That's our game trade sorted. Exciting times. Looking forward to talking about those games when we play them on the show. So that will happen later this year. But that's going to close us out for today's episode. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for hopping on here, putting your ears to our voices and injecting them into your minds. That is essentially what a podcast is. We are doctors and we are surgically putting our voices into your brains, and it's a nice time. I've done it for like the last decade every day. It's a beautiful thing. Podcasting, we'd love to do it. And we are going to tell you can go to different places to get more of it, such as patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can support us and get bonus episodes and hear about some fun things that we're talking about. Bally, we would like to thank some of our supporters.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my wife Caroline. Thank you all for your $10 tier support. But thank you to all of our patrons. And we should say we put out a show for the start of 2022 where we did our non-Tendo predictions for the year. So we've now done Nintendo predictions as well as non-Tendo predictions, and you can access all the episodes of this Nintendo Life for a single $1 to check out that whole new show. One episode a month.
You can hear me gush about Guardians of the Galaxy, which I no-lifed over the holiday and just like absolutely adored. That game's way better than it has any right to be, and is technically on Switch actually, because there's a cloud version. Though I don't know if I would recommend playing that. But if you
and we talked about Inscription and Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, like a bunch of 2021
stuff.
hits. So check it out
if you're interested. Obviously, you can find the show in various places. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on regular podcasting apps. So if you search This Nintendo Life, you'll find us. Once again, shout out to Spotify reviews. If you go to Spotify and you don't use Spotify, all you need to do is go there, like play one of our episodes, and it should let you rate us. So it's just a 5-star system, I believe. And that would be really helpful if you are someone who listens on regular podcasting apps but would like to give us a bit of a bump on Spotify. Just go to Spotify and give us a rating there. Hugely appreciated. And of course, if you use Spotify, even easier for you, because you're just on there and you're listening right now, and you can just go and press it in your app, I'm sure. So that would be lovely. Would really appreciate that. Definitely get some word out about the show to Spotify listeners, which I think is just a growing place for people to find podcasts at this point in time. So yeah, very, very helpful. Obviously, you can find us in various places around the internet. On Twitter, I am Lord NBZ, and that's where I am to talk about my bad opinions. Bally, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. I'd like to excuse my Wordle posts.
You've been slacking, Bally. I didn't see one for today, so
yeah, because me and Caroline failed.
Oh no!
Yeah, I'll be honest. It was an American spelling of an OUR, which put us off. And there are a lot of 5-letter words that end in OR, especially in a US English dictionary. So yeah, we are bummed. But
you need to campaign for them to localize Wordle into British English.
But then it wouldn't fit into 5 letters.
That's true. That's true.
You'd be ruling out a bunch of words. But I would be up for that for sure. I saw a lot of British Twitter users very grumpy today.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah, I even saw that they were grumpy before I did the word.
Oh,
so I was aware this was an American word, and we still
You still fucked it up. Oh,
yeah,
dang.
really bad.
Well, the struggle continues. So yes, go and follow Bal if you want to continue to subjugate yourself to the hell that is Wordle on Twitter, which I continue to do against my better judgment. So yes, you can find obviously us over there, but you can also find the podcast Twitter, which is at TNL Podcast, which tweets out stuff about the show and what we're doing and fun things like that. And yeah, you can obviously find us in other places. We're on YouTube if you want to go to that version. You can go to Discord and hang out there, talk about some anime bullshit with me and lots of people on there. And yeah, loads of places you can get at us and let us know stuff. It's a good, fun time. I think that's going to close us out, Bally. It's been an okay start to the year. I'm feeling all right about 2022 so far, and I'm starting to do some exercise more, getting some fitness in there. I started Ring Fit this evening, and I'm just setting some goals. Make sure that we've got to get rid of this lockdown weight. It's just got to all come off. So
I'm very interested to see how you get on with Ring Fit, because it seems like a really special game. Like,
it's the best £5 I've ever spent in my life. I got a £50 Amazon voucher for buying the Oculus Quest 2, so I spent it on Ring Fit, which was £55, so I only spent £5 on Ring Fit. So yeah, will be a fun time, and I look forward to getting fit with it. So let's do it, and let's make it a thing. All right, that's going to do us. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with some more podcasting, some more video games, some more Nintendo. Until then, thanks everyone. We'll see you then. Bye bye. The musical interludes used on today's show were Invincible Rainbow Arrow from AI The Somnium Files, copyright Spike Chunsoft 2019, and A Little Bit of Faith from Lake, copyright Gamius 2021.
Did you play Somnium? I can't say the bloody word. Somnium?
Somnium. AI, the Somnium Files.